Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Ichigo awoke his true powers to save his mother. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 61, Rebellion of Blades. Candlelit Cave, unknown location. Far away from prying eyes, hidden away from the rest of the world, a group lay in waiting. Some were bored, others were patient, all were ready. They just needed their leader to return, to finish gathering their allies, to prepare for their revolution. Ugh, this is so boring. A pink-furred Catwoman complained. How much longer are we gonna stick around this place anyway? She looked to her allies at the table in the cave. A long, black-haired man reading a book with a small shrine next to him, an obese man with a large gold chain on his neck with a bag of snacks in his arm, and a woman almost covered in green fur with long mallow hair with a chain around her waist connecting to a red-haired boy dressed in white with a serpentine tail. She looked to the side to see another man, sleeping on his side, with long orange hair and brown skin, and a small ball of light that was a girl with brown pigtails and yellow and black clothing. I'm gonna take a look outside, I could use the fresh air. She was about to leave when a pile of sand rose up and took a humanoid form. Best not, he said, looking to the stairs. He's coming back with two new allies. A high-pitched and bloodthirsty laugh rang out, making the Catwoman and the sand figure look up to the long-haired, pitch-black man with a dual-sided scythe. Next to him was a gaunt man wrapped in chains carrying a large white slab on his back and a heavy metal ball. Who cares about numbers? The laughing man asked. Why don't I go out there and handle this myself? He boasted, earning a snort from the formerly sleeping giant of a man. Shut up. Rushing into this is foolish, he said, trying to return to his nap. An impatient man is so lame, the small fairy girl said. Suddenly, the sound of the entrance opening drew their attention as three figures came in. Welcome back. A girl in a white kimono greeted, with long brown hair and two large bells at her side. The men that came in had one with white skin, a white coat with a thick fur collar with long fingernails, one with teal green hair and a pale blue kimono with an icy blue X on his face, and one with orange skin on a shirtless body with dark stone geysers along his arms, chest, and back with fiery hair. I've brought some new friends, look after them, the pale man said to the bell girl. He went further in to join his allies while the other two got acquainted with the others. Hey! The pink cat called out to the pale man. How much longer do you want us to wait down here? The man started walking toward her. You must be patient a little while longer, our remaining allies will join us soon, he said as he got in front of the girl. Just as she was about to protest, he opened his palm in front of her face and silenced her. Once he had her focus, he curled his fingers and said his promise. The era of the Shinigami will end soon. 1 mile away from said cave. And lost the signal, great. Urahara sighed as he scanned the forest before him. Why did I rush this? I never rush my devices. He complained to no one in particular. He was following the weird Ryatsu he found yesterday, but it managed to disappear. Not helped by the residual mass energy of the army of hollows that attacked yesterday. At least Jinjo is getting me the data on Ichigo's alterations, that should brighten up my night. That boy has come a long way. He smiled with nostalgia as he thought back to training him from his childhood. He was snapped back to the present when he felt something on his right arm. He looked at his limb and felt it before freezing. I should probably head back, he whispered before dashing back to Siriitii, to the archives of registered Shinigami. He felt something happen to his connection to Beneheim, and the message on his arm gave him a bad feeling. No choice. Squad 10 Barracks. What was that about? Hitsugaya asked himself after trying to speak with Hyarinmaru when the connection severed and the dragon disappeared. Unknown to him, many other Soul Reapers were facing similar losses with their Zanpakuto. Some thought nothing of it, others felt the need to be cautious about it. His lieutenant was the former. "Come on, Heiniko." Ranjiku winded her sword that was in the jabbed into the floor, looking around the office for her, something 'cause she couldn't manifest her spirit. He knew that much about her level of ability. "I know I promised we could go shopping in the human world, but one day of training isn't enough to convince the captain." Toshiro rolled his eyes as he entered the office to see the commotion. "And if this is because I didn't jump Ichigo's bones yesterday, sorry, but I'm not gonna give it up just because of a few nice words, or a godly massage, or, hey captain," she said when she noticed her mortified superior officer. "That was just, I don't need to know the details, Ranjiku," he said as his lieutenant fell into the couch, looking justly embarrassed. "And yes, you'd need to do a lot more work before I give you leave for the human world." The peach-haired lieutenant let out a small cry of disappointment just as Isane and Momo entered the room. "Hello Ranjiku, Shiro," Hinamori said, greeting her two friends. "Why does she refuse to call me captain?" He wondered for what was probably the 1000th time regarding the girl. "How are you, Momo? What happened those 3 days in the world of the living?" "Lots of denial and lots of crying," she said, embarrassed by the situation. "It took some doing, but I'm ready to get back to my duties as a lieutenant. Captain Shinji sure is generous to let me keep the position," she said, releasing a nervous laugh and showing a certain lack of faith in her skills. "He likely believes that you are truly capable of the position, you just need confidence in yourself." Ranjiko chimed in, relieved for the distraction away from her own embarrassment. "So, what brings you two along?" "This does," Hinamori said as she gave Ranjiku a sheet of paper. "There's going to be a lieutenant's meeting soon. I can't wait to see this Ishida that Lieutenant Kurosaki told me about. Giving up his lieutenant's position for a seat in the first division." Ranjiku mused, thinking about the hybrid that was worming his way into her thoughts more often lately. "All to focus on his training, that boy is dedicated," she said with a smile, snapping out of her daydream when Isane reminded them of her presence. "Ranjiku, what were you doing with your Zanpakuto?" the tall lieutenant asked, looking at the blade that was stabbed into the floor. "Well, with our enemies getting stronger and smarter, I figured it was time to take initiative and train," Ranjiku said, gaining some measure of shock from the other lieutenants. "I was making progress yesterday, but now she refuses to even talk to me." "You're having troubles with your Zanpakuto too?" Isane asked, resting a hand on the hilt of her sword. "My Itegimo has been slow to respond as well for the past few days." Toshiro felt some dots connecting in his mind. Heiniko's complete absence, Itegimo's slow response, his higher Inmaru cutting off their connection so suddenly? This needed investigating, and he intended to do just that. No matter how much the girls tempted him with sweet bean buns and tea. Squad 1 Barracks. Another 4 hours. Yamamoto thought as he looked at the hourglass. 8 hours ago, Ichigo took the most dangerous procedure he ever thought could happen, a complete rewrite of his past. Memories and abilities, the very biology and spirituality of a Quincy, just changed with a single swipe of a sword. If this works, the Quincy that could be freed, the deaths that might be prevented, it would go a long way to atoning for his own sins. It was an amazing power Tsukishima has, and also completely terrifying. Should he ever choose to rebel, the consequences would be catastrophic. Which only serves to remind him of the threat of Yawatch. Ichigo needed to be as ready as he could, he needed more training, he needed a true Zanpakuto. He's gone this long without them, it's time to attain his true blades. His musing was cut short as he felt a few familiar, and at the same time unknown, presences come to his domain. "Reveal yourselves," he ordered, not wanting to spare much patience when his nerves are already frayed with this damned experiment of Urahara's. His lieutenant was immediately at his side and went in front of the door, ready for any attack. What came out, however, was not what he was expecting. "Captain Commander." "A pleasure," said a tall woman with violet hair and corkscrew pigtails, an eye patch, and a dress with a large skull embroidered on the front. Next to her was a younger girl with the same hair color that was dressed as a ninja with only one eye visible, which was the same one that the older of the two was missing. Two young boys in blue robes with tall hats with silver hair and green eyes, a tall pale woman with looped hair on her head and seemed like a mannequin, and a figure obscured by a green cloak. "You will be coming with us." Before Sasakibe could react, the young ninja appeared behind him and struck him unconscious. "I can still commune with Ryujin Jaka," Yamamoto thought to himself, "so either he's not here or he's waiting for me to drop my guard. Normally I'd take disciplinary actions and show you how to properly behave yourselves, especially in front of your elders. But you can tell that fool leading you, he'll never be freed, you should worry about the hybrid." They all stiffened at the declaration, which gave Yamamoto enough time to erect a keto barrier around himself. Trapped within his pyramid of green light, he forced himself to wait. In 4 hours, either they'd survive or there won't be a Siriitii anymore. So Kayaka Hill. Benihime is missing, and the only thing I've found that was remotely close to this was a hollow that was killed with Kayan. Urahara drove his mind into overdrive, trying to decipher an answer for why he seems to have lost contact with his Zanpakuto spirit. His research had to wait as there was a sudden order for most every Soul Reaper that gained Shirkai, at least, go to the execution hill for a surprise meeting. Most every captain and lieutenant was there, a couple of third seats, and Hamura and Shizuku. The only ones not there were Ishin and Yuryu, who refused to leave the human world for fear that Aizen had enough time to prepare. Everyone around him was wondering the same thing, talking about the matter with each other. Why did Yamamoto call this meeting? On a gamble, he asked the question plaguing him. Is anyone else having trouble with their Zanpakuto? The many Shinigami around him asked as each one tried to contact their sword spirits and receiving only silence in return. The only odd one out was Byakuya, who was looking more shocked than others before regaining a cold look in his eyes. That's not suspicious. The scientist thought sarcastically as the sounds of footsteps alerted them to a new figure coming to them through the fog, and his tracker was beeping wildly. Soon it was revealed to be Lieutenant Sasakibe, but he seemed unconscious and carried by some force. Then a man, with long fingernails dressed in all white, appeared behind the gathered Soul Reapers. He's the source. Likely the reason our Zanpakuto have been reacting strangely. The Demi-Vizard? Mayuri leaned in to ask Urahara, now wearing a golden headdress with his hair stylized into a pharaoh's cloth crown. The reason for your earlier question then? Coming to a similar conclusion to Urahara. Likely mind control, but we'll have to fight against our own Zanpakuto. And likely without Shirkai. He responded while Kamamura was demanding answers. That's irritating. The deranged man sighed before the white man unleashed a gust of wind against them. You seem like you might be a decent warm-up. Kenpachi growled as he brushed the wind aside with his own gust. Try to entertain me, punk. Bang Kai. Kamamura growled, creating the armored giant behind him Kakujo Tenjin Mo-o. Hold him still, Zaraki. The wolf growled as he brought his blade down, the giant almost mirroring his actions. Zaraki noticed this and dashed to Sajin, pushing him out of the way and catching the blade. This feels heavier than when he normally swings it. Kenpachi idly noted before tightening his grip and getting into a tugging battle with the giant. Our Zanpakuto are fighting against us. Urahara yelled out as the giant exploded into steam and re-emerged as a giant red figure with flame in his mouth and eyes, with 2 large bolas connected by ropes on his side. Tenken? Sajin asked, confused and a little heartbroken, just as the giant attacked him and forcing the wolf on the defensive. He got Kamamura's arm in his ropes as he pulled the man-beast off balance and about to lay a finishing blow, until he was kicked back by Zaraki. Get back up, wolf, this isn't the time to get distracted. He warned as the man in white let out a chuckle. It's just as that man stated. He said, raising one hand to his face. The Shinigami and their Zanpakuto have been separated. I've freed them from your control. He extended his arm as a series of explosions went off in the distances, the cries of the injured and clangs of battle ringing throughout the Siriitii. And now they are your enemies. Ready to strike back at the ones that have enslaved them. Gaze upon their true form. He announced as the Zanpakuto revealed themselves. There were new additions, a man with peacock feathers along his arms with tan fabric wrapped around his head and a woman with horns and heavy white winter clothing with a chest that gave Ranjiku a run for her money. From the Soul Reapers themselves, came a man completely covered in samurai armor, a golden child with blank eyes and moth wings, a mummy with a pharaoh's mask that was walking backwards, a large red oni, a hulking being with cylinders in his back, a red-skinned woman with the lower body of a snake, a skeleton in ragged clothing, a tall gaunt figure that seemed to be wrapped in gold with a large beak, a girl with a bee-like mask and large calves, one dressed in an icy white kimono with skin as white as snow, and something that deeply disturbed everyone. Yuichiro Kusajishi, otherwise known as Nozarashi, without a smile or sense of innocence. Everyone could feel the hate and anger from Zaraki as he stepped forward with Byakuya joining him. "Enough waiting, who are you?" Byakuya demanded. "And what makes you so confident you'll be making it out of here alive?" Zaraki growled, furious with the loss of one of his most precious people. The man commanding the Zanpakuto looked at the assembly of Soul Reapers and answered. "I'm known as Muramasa, and today marks the end of your reign over the Zanpakuto." He opened up his hand and summoned a sword from thin air. "From now on, it'll be the Zanpakuto who rule over the Soul Reapers." He was about to stab it into the ground when he remembered the warning some of his allies gave him that seemed to shake them with fear. "And who is this hybrid I should be so wary of?" "That'd be me," he heard from behind him. The Zanpakuto turned around to see Ichigo Kurosaki, standing at the very edge of the cliff they were at and directly behind them. He was stretching his arm and shoulders, causing his bones to pop rapidly. "So, who do I break first?" Ichigo's previous location. 3, 2, 1, there. Jinjo thought as the contract keeping Ichigo asleep finished its time. He sent the accumulated data to the labs back at the SRDI, and had Riruka permit him in the dollhouse. Inside, Jericho was ready to re-establish the sleeping contract should Ichigo react violently while Tsukishima was ready for the next part. "Ichigo, how are you?" Jinjo asked, the scanners already picking up the brain activity. "Had one hell of a nap and a dull throb in my head," he responded from inside the tube, stretching himself out. "What happened?" "I remember flirting with Ranjaku, but then I blacked out. Some idiot dropped a ton of Sekiseki stone on your head." Tsukishima lied smoothly. "It broke into pieces and you went out like a light. And since you clearly remembered recent events, let's check something harder," Jinjo suggested. "Like heritage." The Fullbringers nodded to each other, ready to act if and when necessary. "Give us the history of the Quincy." Ichigo closed his eyes and seemed to have a bit of a migraine, putting everyone on edge. Roughly 1,000 years ago, a baby was born that could do little more than breath. Ichigo started, the tension in the room getting thicker. Anyone that came into contact with him was miraculously healed, and some even gained powers later on. That child was Yawatch, the strongest Quincy and son of the Soul King. He was believed to be the father of all Quincy, but that's not true. Jinjo stole a quick glance to the scans. So far everything was still green. He was just the first and the strongest. A Quincy is made when a powerful soul being like a strong Shinigami and a human have a child. The residual Raisher strengthens the baby until they gain the ability to see and fight spirits by manipulating Raisher into physical forms, and the strong ones can manifest weapons and others' applications. Yawatch tried to unite all of the Quincy under his banner, but two families in particular managed to avoid him, the Yoshida and Kurosaki. My father is another strong Soul Reaper that married my Quincy mother and made me that much stronger and closer to my Shinigami roots. Does that answer your questions? The Fullbringers looked at their monitors one last time before opening the capsule and releasing the hybrid. "Well, everything checks out, Ichigo," Tsukishima said, trying to help him out. "Though you may want to take it easy for a little bit." He noticed Ichigo wasn't listening to him, as soon stood up straight under his own power, something that began to radiate. "I have to go, my people need me," he said before disappearing in a burst of speed, destroying the dollhouse and returning them to their original size. "And oh. Riruka cried out. "You can't do this. You can't die, Labby," she wailed through tears. "A terrible reference, mild discomfort in my hips, and we rank below a dollhouse," Jinjo thought dryly. "Why am I doing this again?" Current scene. Volunteers? Ichigo asked, getting the gist that this guy called Muramasa had freed the Zanpakuto. None of them moved, so Ichigo started walking towards Muramasa. Whatever, I can wait. What I can't wait for is where my sensei is. The Zanpakuto parted as the hybrid boldly strode to the man responsible for the newest mess he would probably clean up. So why don't you tell us where Yamamoto is? The white man and Ichigo glared at each other when they stood face to face. Muramasa was unimpressed. The boy seemed weak and rather arrogant, but he was fast. Genryusai Yamamoto has been sealed away, he answered, not gaining a reaction from the boy. When we approached his Zanpakuto, Ryujin Jaka, he refused to cooperate with us. So we had our allies cat dash. You expect me to believe that crap? Ichigo interrupted, focusing on Muramasa while a man dressed in robes with a shrine on his back was moving behind him. One of the most powerful soul reapers, and you expect me to believe that he was sealed away? You may not believe it, Muramasa started when his ally aimed to strike at Ichigo from behind, but that is the dash. Ichigo was suddenly next to the spirit about to attack him, with said spirit flying back from the punch it received. Now Muramasa was shocked and ready to believe the warnings about the hybrid. I couldn't even follow him and he struck down Ganryumaru so easily. Then a burning bola wrapped around Ichigo's arm. He looked over to see Tenkan pulling on the rope connecting them, and Ichigo did not budge. You think that glare's working? He asked as the green-furred woman began to swing a familiar serrated whip sword at him. Ichigo wrapped his arm around the rope and yanked, pulling Tenkan along and throwing him into the girl he felt was Zabimaru, or at least half of Zabimaru. The other half was trying to launch a sneak attack. He let the hit land, but the strike only yielded torn clothes and sparks. He turned to look the red-haired snake kid in the eye before kicking him in the face and sending him flying. Then Ichigo felt an intense heat, nowhere near Ryujin Jaka but noticeable. He saw an orange-skinned figure sprout spike like geysers of flames from his chest. He dodged and slammed the Zanpakuto's head into the ground. I recognized most of these guys attacking me, but who are you? That's Rika. Everyone looked over to Amagai, who had his hand raised. He's my Zanpakuto. Ichigo shrugged and was about to continue his pummeling before the other Zanpakuto that were attacking him attempted an all-out assault. Attempted and failed as he moved with such speed he landed an Ikatsu punch on each of them at nearly the same time and sent them flying all over the Siriidii. I almost get Zaraki's boredom with weaklings. He griped until he felt parts of him get wrapped up, but no binds could be seen. Neat, he said as the remaining Zanpakuto got between him and the remaining captains. You truly are powerful, Muramasa said, almost hungrily. I wonder what your Zanpakuto has to say about you. I'll give you 10 seconds to do your thing before I break out of this and kill you, Ichigo said, sounding annoyed and bored. Oh god, I'm actually curious about this. I'm becoming Urahara, he thought in terror as Muramasa began his ritual. Now hear my voice, follow your instincts and release your soul from this body, he said as Ichigo's rapier swirled around him. Discard your dash, he was about to continue before Ichigo's hand wrapped around his throat. 10 seconds passed. Ichigo said as his fingers tightened around Muramasa's throat. He would have continued before his arm started coming apart. He quickly broke his other arm free and severed his arm before more could unravel. You will stay put, Ichigo Kurosaki. The hybrid looked at a mannequin woman in loose robes and looped hair on her head, bearing a Ryatsu he was all too familiar with. Beneheim, Urahara's Zanpakuto, and he was well aware of her Bankai powers. His arm restored itself and he lifted his hands above his head, letting Muramasa continue. Discard your fear, the blade said between coughing fits, look ahead. Go forth, do not stop. Ichigo actually felt like something was being pulled from him as Muramasa continued. Run and you will die, hesitate and you will die. He roughly dug his hand into Ichigo's spirit, earning a grunt of discomfort but no screams of pain. Come now, Zangetsu. He pulled out a rope of rapier from within Ichigo as the power erupted, creating a fog of dust. Ichigo was hunched slightly, but stood up straight soon enough. Been a while since we actually talked, how have you been? he asked, facing a figure that wore a long white coat with a black fur collar and cuffs, with baggy hakama pants and a black mask with bull horns.
Zangetsu.
Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
Mayuri's reason for a new look.
Now let's see, if we adjusted the ratio here, then we can finally make a vitamin supplement that tastes good and is actually effective.
Urahara whispered to himself as a large explosion rocked the lab.
He put it out of his mind. They were a common occurrence for him, until he caught a familiar scent of burning flesh.
He looked to his side and flinched slightly. Need a new face, Mayuri?
He asked, earning a nod from the faceless figure.
Take as much time as you need, please. Chapter 62, Lord of Swords. Meeting between Zanpakuto and Shinigami. So much power.
Muramasa thought in awe of the spirit he had unleashed.
With him I can finally get to Yamamoto. Soon, you will be freed. Most of the other Zanpakuto seem a little apprehensive around the blade, and he understood why. Aside from the amount of power, it was dark and hungry. Almost as if it was ready to consume everything around it.
Some other Zanpakuto seemed to be looking at him with some confusion, but also longing. Welcome, Comdash, he started to say, keeping up the image of the freedom fighter, but he froze when the dark figure spoke.
Get out of here.
Zangetsu simply said while creating two blades in his hands, one long kyber knife blade with a hollowed-out portion in the middle of the blade and a smaller trench knife the size of his arm with an enclosed handle.
You'll only be in my way.
Most of the Zanpakuto wanted to heed his words, others felt like they should push their chance.
Zangetsu, we have a chance to end it all here. Beneheim started.
I can still dash. She was silenced when Zangetsu's kyber blade found her neck and was ready to cut through it. No one is killing the king, he stated coldly while his Ryatsu burned like fire, but me. He pushed the mannequin girl away and faced Ichigo again. Now go, you'll only get killed if you stay. Many Soul Reapers and Zanpakuto began to either flee or attack the other side while getting as far from the two hybrids as possible.
Muramasa glared at Zangetsu, concerned about that king comment until he was dragged away by Yachiiro and Shiroyuki.
Zangetsu always uses the horse and king analogy when referring to himself and Ichigo. Nozarashi said in a lifeless tone. Until he wins, Ichigo will still be called King.
That's just who Zangetsu is. Shiroyuki added as they fled. Muramasa didn't seem convinced, but the power radiating from the two was enough to convince him to get as far away as he could. With Ichigo and Zangetsu. So, why are you rebelling?
Ichigo asked his lifelong companion, staring into those cold, hungry eyes behind that fearsome mask.
Sick of playing horse, want to be my own king, stuff like that. Zangetsu answered, charging a Siro between his horns.
Ichigo responded by readying a Getsuga Tensho, both attacks forming from the ambient erasure and their own power. With a roar they fired their attacks at each other and formed a massive explosive blast from the collision, the shockwave destroying the remains of Sokayaku Hill, most of the buildings in the immediate vicinity, and fractured much of the Siriidii. Old man's going to be pissed about this when he sees it. Ichigo sighed mentally as he saw the destruction.
He and Zangetsu then used high-speed movements to dodge and attack each other, creating shockwaves with every clash. So what's really going on? The hybrid asked through their mental connection once the two got into a blade lock. That emo prick is manipulating the other Zanpakuto.
The sword answered as they continued to fight, backing off to fire thousands of arrows at the other.
I felt it when he was calling out to me.
While keeping up the image of them fighting, Ichigo got a good look at the battlefield.
The Zanpakuto were easily overpowering most of the Shinigami, with only most captains and lieutenants able to fight back.
He did catch a glimpse of Byakuya being chased by a samurai with thousands of flower petals coming from his sword hilt, and Ganju throwing fireworks at a giant sand figure. From the looks of it, he takes the main weakness or hate they have and uses it to put them under his thrall.
And you're unaffected?
Ichigo continued as they directed their fight to get in the way of most of the Zanpakuto attacking the weaker Soul Reapers, pacifying them with much more fearsome displays of power.
Anyone else? Hard to say. Zangetsu charged another Getsuga through his swords while Ichigo mimicked the action.
They collided with each other and exploded. A loud snap preceded what resembled a nuclear explosion, leaving the two with horrific burns and missing limbs, which were already healing rapidly. Maybe because I'm not a traditional Zanpakuto blade, we have no reason to hate each other, or because I'm too strong for him. Either way, I'm not under his control.
So, you're planning to infiltrate and gather intelligence?
Ichigo asked as the two settled down as the remaining Soul Reapers fled to the Squad 4 barracks, which were somehow still standing, and the Zanpakuto fled Siriidii altogether.
Might as well. Zangetsu responded, relaxing now that they didn't need to keep up the act. Something about Muramasa doesn't add up and I don't get to spend nearly enough time around the other Zanpakuto. You guys socialize? Ichigo asked as he got ready to leave.
Course we do.
The blade responded.
Sometimes we enter each other's worlds once we're in proximity, and there's an entire dimension where we gather at will though stability is questionable. And Enjetsu is as annoying as your dad, let me tell you.
And now I have nightmares.
Ichigo said aloud as the smoke and dust began to dissipate.
I'll see you Zangetsu. Goodbye Ichigo.
The two hybrids separated after that, Ichigo heading for Squad 4 while Zangetsu headed out to find the other Zanpakuto.
Squad 4 barracks.
Get these men to the ore, they need surgery.
Unohana calmly ordered, making her squad move to obey.
She soon joined the remaining captains and a few of the lieutenants to receive a damage report.
How bad is it? Squad barracks 2 and 12 are still standing. Kayaraku answer, taking command in lieu of Yamamoto.
Squad 14 is still functioning due to it being so widespread in the Rokkan, although they have been attacked in one district in particular.
Surprised anything is still standing after that fight between Ichigo and his Zanpakuto. Master took a shine to him for a reason Shunsui.
Yukitake said, hoping to alleviate the situation.
I would have held back, but we needed to clear everyone out.
Ichigo said, appearing before them.
Good news and bad news. Good news is, where's Byakuya and Zaraki? He asked, seeing most of the captains except for Byakuya and Kenpachi. Byakuya has yet to appear and Zaraki needed to be restrained. Soifan answered, followed by a loud angry and muffled roar that was Kenpachi. He's not happy about losing Yuichiro. Right, good news is that the Zanpakuto are not rebelling.
Ichigo said, earning a sigh of relief and surprise from all the captains.
Bad news is dash. They're being controlled.
Urahara continued, earning a nod from Ichigo.
That explains this.
Kasuke pulled down his sleeve to reveal the phrase no choice written in stitches in his arm.
Beniheim's Bankai is restructuring, allowing me to take apart and rebuild anything she touches. She wrote down this hint when I was searching for the anomaly that we now know to be Muramasa. How did you figure this out, Ichigo?
Rukia asked, supporting her captain.
We watched Muramasa turn Zangetsu against you. You saw Zangetsu manifest. Ichigo responded.
We made it look like he was under their command so he could get answers, like what is really going on.
Zangetsu never betrayed me. Any idea why?
Shinji asked, curious as to what made any Zanpakuto exempt from Muramasa's influence.
Maybe Muramasa's overtaxing himself, Zangetsu's just too strong, or because he's not a pure Shinigami Zanpakuto. The hybrid suggested. We'll just have to wait and see from there. In the meantime, I suggest every Soul Reaper should fight their own Zanpakuto. Zangetsu says Muramasa takes the weak link of the bond between Shinigami and Zanpakuto to take control of them. Might be enlightening for most Soul Reapers. Soifan pushed off the wall and began to walk off.
The able-bodied of Squad 2 will take first watch, figure out who's next amongst yourselves, she said before disappearing.
Rukia, let's gather what Shinigami we can and ready them for the next shift. Yukitake ordered as he went off to find who he could.
Yes, sir.
Rukia responded, following her captain. Kayaraku and Ichigo faced each other.
Ichigo, try to keep damage to a minimum,
the acting leader ordered.
While I agree it would be for the best for each Soul Reaper to face their own Zanpakuto, we can't waste any time.
If you come across any, bring them down.
Ichigo nodded mutely to the captain.
Good, now get to a vantage point. Rest if you need it, but I want you ready to fight at a moment's notice. With Zaraki, the next day. When I see that bastard, I'm going to carve him into pieces.
The Kenpachi growled as he ran throughout the Siriitii.
Byakuya was still missing and they had yet to find where the Zanpakuto were hiding. Someone suggested jogging, and he's been running for the past 5 hours.
He was mad before, losing his surrogate daughter in sword spirit, but when he heard they were under Muramesa's mental manipulation, he became livid.
For his own sake, Unohana put some of his bells back in his hair.
They were only reactive to people that had strength on par with his own, so the only ones that could make them ring were herself, Ichigo, Sangetsu, and Nozarashi. And it started to ring when he finally stopped running. He closed his eye and felt her, coming straight ahead like he would always do. When he opened his eyes, he saw the pink-haired little girl that was his Zanpakuto spirit. Her eyes were blank and lifeless, but she was crying constantly.
"Hello, Zaraki,"
she said, hollow and cold, glaring at the Kenpachi with her lifeless eyes.
"What was it that Muramesa had to use?"
he asked his sword.
"What did he use to turn you against me, Yuichiro?"
Her movements grew shaky as she grabbed her small blade at her side, the sounds of crying starting to come.
"You always wanted to be alone,"
she answered, pulling her sword out and creating a large skeleton with a line of bone splitting the skull in half vertically and a large furry ball with only its eyes visible, both of which carried a blade. "I was always by your side, but you never relied on me.
Why did you hate me, Kenny?"
Zaraki felt like his heart was crushed, but he stood strong and tall.
"I'm sorry, Nozarashi," he said, calling out the name of his Zanpakuto.
"The only thing I wanted was to fight, to prolong them as much as possible. I distanced myself from you in that pursuit of combat, but you found a way to be beside me anyway." He never once reached for his sword as he opened his Shihakusho and dropped his guard. "If you truly hate me, then come and kill me now, because I will not fight you. You were the only one to stay by my side throughout everything."
He closed his eyes and accepted what was to come.
All of Siriitii heard Yuichiro's heartbreaking yell.
Kira versus Wabasuk. Ichigo and his Zanpakuto did a number on the entire city.
Kira whispered in fearful awe as he made his patrol through the remains of Siriitii. It was his last district as he tried to get a full scope of the damage from the attack last night, and even the functioning buildings were heavily damaged. If Aizen were to attack now, they'd be like lambs to the slaughter, defenseless and weak. He kept running until he heard a familiar sound of chains rattling. A harsh melody that reminded him of the weights that crushed a man's soul. He looked ahead and saw the gaunt figure of a man, carrying a giant white slab of rock on his back with a large steel ball that probably weighed twice what the stone did, and carrying a hook sword, shambling toward him.
Wabasuk. Kira.
The two greeted each other, both with a level of disdain.
Kira with the betrayal of his weapon and Wabasuk with the contempt for his former master. "I won't ask why you chose to side with Muramesa," Izuru continued as they came closer to each other, readying to fight.
"Any of the reasons I loathe myself come to mind. I couldn't stop Captain Ikimara from leaving. I latched onto Captain Odoribashi the moment he took over the 3rd Division instead of becoming captain myself. I could hardly protect my friends during Ichigo's attack on the Siriitii. I know I am pathetic, Wabasuk." "Then there is no need to talk,"
the tortured Zanpakuto said, just before Kira appeared before him and unleashing a barrage of strikes.
Wabasuk easily blocked these attacks, curious as to why his former master would use such a pointless tactic when it would render the blade in his hand useless.
Kira finally ended his assault and the Zanpakuto felt his feet being pulled out from under him. "Bakuto number 4, Hainawa," Kira whispered as he tripped his Zanpakuto and angled the sword's edge over Wabasuk's neck.
"I know I'm pathetic, but I've learned from my losses,"
he yelled as he let the sword's increased weight drop like a guillotine on Wabasuk's neck.
His head separated from his body and both disappeared to reveal the hooked blade of his shurikai.
The lieutenant stood his hooked blade up and sat down in front of it.
"I don't mind that I was never made captain, and frankly, I'm not too sure why I was made lieutenant. I don't think I have what it takes to even be a leader." He grasped his blade as it returned to his soul. Some people are meant to lead, like Captains Kachiki, Odoribashi, Yamamoto, even Captain Kayaraka despite his laziness. Others are just meant to follow, like Momo and myself. But I don't feel ashamed for that. Those that lead are the ones that direct us to greatness, while those that follow are the ones that build the foundation of that greatness. Those thoughts, they lift my burden just a little, Wabasuk. He finished with a smile, basking in the wind as he let that thought sink in. Then do us both a favor and stop being so depressing. Wabasuk groaned, earning a small chuckle from his wielder.
With Urahara. Fascinating.
Mayuri said with glee as he analyzed the raw data pouring before him. It seems that our Zanpakuto spirits have been completely removed from us and now exist as separate entities. He had several probes and jacks inserted to his skull and body to examine the state of the Shinigami after Muramesa's alleged liberation. Most of the time he and Urahara spent at their division was spent restoring what systems they prioritized, monitoring and defenses. Urahara himself was keeping an eye on the surveillance monitors to try to find the hiding place of the Zanpakuto and the fights that were occurring. Right now, Izuru and Wabasuk met, Rinji was fighting the two halves of Zabimaru, and Ichigo found someone they thought missing. Seems like that's the case, though we may need to change that theory. Urahara said before typing out a command and sending the video feed to Mayuri, now watching Rinji fighting with his Shurkai. We have been separated, but if we prove ourselves to our Zanpakuto in some facet and regain that respect, then we'll get our Shurkai at least. So Muramesa doesn't completely sever the connection. Seems like the theory of favor is that the Soul Reaper in question has no personal troubles. Mayuri sighed, wondering what severed his connection to his Ashizoji Jaizu. That might ease the concerns of the Zanpakuto being defeated and us losing them. We'll have to test that. Urahara agreed while shifting the feeds to see Hisagi managing to flee from his Kazushini and finding Muramesa, who seemed to be having trouble staying corporeal. Maybe Zangetsu can do that, he'll be finding their hiding place soon enough. He said, settling on the fight between Lieutenants Matsumoto and Hinamori against their Zanpakuto. Ranjiku and Momo versus Haneko and Tobium. I told you, Tobium. Momo yelled out, unconsciously summoning her Shurkai.
I'm done with being weak.
She swung her blade and countered the fireballs that her blade spirit sent at her. The two were fighting for a good while in terms of actual combat. I'm tired of always being the one protected, tired of getting all the pity, tired of being that little girl Aizen took advantage of. She yelled as she forced her blade on the defensive. And I refuse to think that any part of my being, separate or otherwise, still thinks I'm alright with being that pathetic. She pointed her pronged saber at her bell-wielding spirit. I may be a gentle person, but I am still a lieutenant.
And I will not back down anymore.
She seems better. Ranjiku mused as she and Haneko watched the two petite girls clash, settling their own disputes.
So, did you really rebel because I didn't ride till my legs gave out?
She asked her catgirl sword spirit, who promptly scoffed.
No.
She denied, not looking her former wielder in the face.
Not entirely.
Certainly a factor, but it plays into my biggest gripe with you.
The Ash Cat declared, now facing Ranjiku.
You used to be so much more active, so full of life and youth. Then you became a lieutenant to that lazy bum of a captain and turned into such a killjoy. I thought you'd go back to your usual self when that brat became captain, but then you just turned into a lazy drinker.
You stopped being fun, you got old.
Ranjiko glared at her sword as she then shook her head and continued. Even now, you're just sitting on your ass instead of pursuing that hot guy that's clearly worming his way into your heart. If Jin thought about you that way, he wouldn't have asked Ichigo to be the better man. You were his little sister and nothing more. The only excuse you have left is that you're holding back.
Oh, I'm X times his age, or I'm a lieutenant, or it'd be unprofessional.
He clearly doesn't care and thinks you're still one of the sexiest women he's seen, and he's married a lieutenant while being a lieutenant himself, with a harem.
Haneko continued to lash out at her mistress.
Try taking that plunge and stop teasing him.
Open up your heart again. Or don't.
I'll take him if you're too much of a pussy. And not the fun kind.
She challenged vulgarly and earning a blush from her Shinigami.
She was about to attack before getting hit by her ally.
Look out! Tobium cried out as she slammed into Haneko from the side.
Did your flabby body make it too hard to dodge? She rudely insulted her teammate, just before she was bound in keto wrappings.
Ranjaku, are you hurt? Momo asked, seeing how red Matsumoto's face was. Shall we take them back or have them returned to us? I say neither. Another voice suggested before the entire area was engulfed in a suffocating Ryatsu. As soon as it appeared, it faded, and the two lieutenants saw the black-masked and horned visage of Zangetsu. He brought up a clawed finger before slicing through the keto binds like wet paper. I'll be taking them and leaving, he said simply before doing just that, grasping them on the shoulders and disappearing from the spot. Zanpakuto Hideout. A cave of Sekiseki stone. Zangetsu mused as he entered the hideaway of the Zanpakuto. Inside he heard the remaining Zanpakuto talk about losing Wabasuk and Zabimaru as well as discussing their latest addition, a Shinigami captain. Now that's interesting, he thought as he went further inside to see Byakuya declare his intent to follow his instincts and pride, just the same as the Zanpakuto. Just because you helped my escape of the other Soul Reapers doesn't mean we'll automatically trust you, Muramasa declared as the other Zanpakuto readied their weapons. If you want to prove yourself Byakuya Kachiki, it must be something drastic, the man in samurai armor, Senbunzakura if he had to guess, stated. A Zanpakuto slain by anyone but their wielder will be gone for good. He took a moment to scan the group and found his target. Slay your sister's Zanpakuto. The room gasped as the red-skinned Lamia and the skeleton in rags moved in front of Shirayuki. What are you talking about? Demanded the snake woman. We're not letting anyone hurt Big Sis. The skeleton rattled his jaw in agreement as the serpent produced a curved dagger like snake fangs in water while the skeleton pulled out a pitch-black scythe. Saikuken, Moku, relax, the large man, Hozukimaru stated. Byakuya loves his sister too much for him to just kill her Zanpakuto. Set Sefrep 8EB LLTIYHWSISIW, the inverted mummy stated, automatically identifying as Sakanade. The other Zanpakuto grinned in anticipation of striking down Byakuya when he fails to prove himself, while others seemed less convinced. Suzumabachi, the little fairy girl, seemed distraught herself. Zangetsu. The hybrid blade looked at Tobium, who was clutching at his robes with Heiniko and looking at him with pleading eyes. Is this right? We're turning against our own simply to test one of the Shinigami we're rebelling against. Don't worry, Zangetsu assured them. The only thing this will test is how much I hurt them, he said, just as Byakuya viciously attacked Shirayuki. Byakuya held the upper hand until Shirayuki began to use her Tsukishiro ability. Eventually Byakuya managed to get behind her with a flash step evasion move and trapped her in the Kido spell, Rikujikoro. If it's for the sake of my pride, there's nothing I won't destroy, Byakuya declared as he was about to cut through the Ice Woman. And this is where I draw the line, Zangetsu said, just before moving to save Shirayuki at the last second. Sorry for the wait, my dear, he whispered to her, as she took the moment to realize she's still alive. Zangetsu. She cheered in joy, wrapping her arms around him as he freed her from the spell. He returned to the assembly of Zanpakuto spirits along with Byakuya. He was really about to kill her, Muramasa mused. A Soul Reaper without their Zanpakuto is as good as dead. He was stopped as Zangetsu punched him in the throat and sent him flying into the cave walls. Just as the other Zanpakuto were about to react, Zangetsu flashed behind them with blood dripping from his claws. Most of the Zanpakuto dropped to their knees as blood spurted from their chests. The only ones unaffected were the ones that protested the callous attack on one of their own. Keep this in mind, the hybrid growled as the Vizard Zanpakuto got up first and giving him a knowing glare, we are not invincible and we only have each other. He headed towards a large stone before flicking his wrist and shredding it with thin rapier threads, leaving behind a simple chair formation. If we can so easily turn our backs on our own like this, simply to demand the loyalty of one of the very people we've freed ourselves from, then how are we better? He sat down on his makeshift throne as Shirayuki appeared at his side, along with Heiniko, Tobium, Suzumabachi, the now-named Saikoken and Moku, even some of the Zanpakuto that he slashed like Hozukimaru and Kujaku. If you're so ready to cast aside one ally to bring in someone that might be a double agent, then I doubt your qualities as a leader, Muramasa. From now on, I'll call the shots. Zangetsu declared, creating a standoff between the ones following Muramasa and his own side. As for you, Kuchiki, he said, gaining the noble's attention before appearing behind him with a thin cut on Byakuya's neck. The moment I think you'll betray us, I'll kill you. The hybrid returned to his throne while Muramasa glared at him, before kneeling down. Very well, you now command us. With Ichigo, Kuchiki House. Now, let's find those archives. Ichigo said to himself. He met with Byakuya just as he was about to follow Muramasa through a poorly made garganta, stopping him with an oddly vicious attack. When Ichigo demanded an answer, Byakuya referred to Ichigo by his first name and said that it was his pride that compelled him. He attacked Ichigo again and slipped something into his Shihakusho and leaving before Ichigo could counterattack. Ichigo now had a key, one that Rukia recognized as one to the Kuchiki family archives. It seemed that Byakuya wanted to send him a message. He never referred to Ichigo as anything but his full name when they spoke, and Byakuya's pride as a Kuchiki meant that something connected to his family was responsible for this mess. Or that was what Ichigo got out of it, and he might be walking into a trap. If Byakuya is trying to tell you anything, then it must be related to Koga Kuchiki. Kayaraku told him when he reported the incident, the memory of the conversation replaying in Ichigo's mind as he ventured deeper into the archives. He married into the clan while the previous head, Jinrei Kuchiki, was still captain of the 6th. At the time there was a rebellion and he showed to be instrumental to our victory. Then, I'm sure you know how that story plays out. Some of the higher-ups got concerned, had him imprisoned, and he snapped and turned against us. He was eventually defeated and sealed with only Old Man Yama left to know his location. Exiled clans, betrayed Shinigami looking for revenge, no wonder everyone says I'm changing Soul Society for the better. Ichigo groaned as he finally found a secret alcove in the archives that was labeled, Exiles. This place was terrible before. He unlocked the hidden door before finding a scroll that was labeled Koga Kuchiki, the only scroll there. Now let's see, the hybrid whispered as he opened the scroll and scanned its contents. Married into the clan, 3rd seat, leader of a special unit, Zanpakuto, Muramasa, now this'll come in handy. Ichigo began to study the notes of Jinrei Kuchiki on how to combat the Zanpakuto Muramasa. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers. The underdeveloped Shinigami. Come on. Isane groaned, using the last of the anesthesia and cold packs on a patient with a fever and in need of pain medication. I need help. I've got it. She heard someone say as she turned to see an equally tall and well-endowed woman in white winter clothing and yak horns breathing a cold air on her patient. The patient himself seemed to relax as the air did the trick. All better. Thanks, Ategumo. Isane said happily. What would I do without you? Zanpakuto and Soul Reaper beamed at each other, before remembering that they were currently enemies. Before the spirit could act, Isane pulled out her sword and stabbed her Zanpakuto spirit through the chest and caused her to turn into her Shurkai blade. The blade dropped to the ground with a clatter as Isane felt like crying. Is this all the character development I get? The underdeveloped Zanpakuto. In a mountainous landscape with falling snow all around rested a single cottage housing Ategumo and Isane Kotetsu. Both were sitting around a small fire, the Zanpakuto pouting while the Shinigami pleaded with her sword. Ategumo, please tell me. Why did you leave me? Isane asked, trying to understand herself as well as her Zanpakuto. Obviously, it's because you. She paused, trying to think of the reason why she turned on her mistress before coming to the horrifying answer. I didn't actually have a reason. She cried, eyes brimming with tears. Do we ever get a character arc? Isane asked, just about to cry as well. Isane. Sword and Soul Reaper embraced each other. Ategumo. The two cried as the dams broke. The little scalpel. What's wrong, little guy? Zangetsu was walking through the streets of the Siriitii until he saw a little white robot that was looking dejected. The small robot had a dot and a vertical line for eyes as it turned to face the hybrid spirit. I have no problems with my wielder. The Zanpakuto spirit said, almost reminding Zangetsu of a timid medic Ichigo met a while ago. But, I can't seem to return to him. Maybe, he doesn't want me. Ah, that's not it, little guy. Zangetsu assured, removing the mask on his face.
You're just stuck like this until either he defeats you or you just die. The robot started shaking in fear.
That came out wrong. Look, if you don't have a problem then just go back to him. Zangetsu said before standing upright. I'll make it easy for you. He then vaporized the kidbot with a point-blank zero. Meanwhile, at Squad 4's Emergency Relief Center. Hisagamaru.
Hanataro cried, cradling his now lifeless blade.
I'm sorry for making you hate me. The
medic stood up and wiped his tears away before holding his sword out.
Fulfill, Hisagamaru.
He desperately called out, getting a small robot to appear instead of his Shurkai scalpel.
Hisagamaru? The robot looked up at the medic. Master! The robot cried before hugging his wielder.
Hanataro returned the embrace, before screaming like a girl.
Break's over. Back to work.
Yasachika ordered, making both timid Soul Reaper and Zanpakuto run like crazy, and getting separated by going in different directions.
Chapter 63, Chipped Edges. Zanpakuto Cave. Now, let's see.
Zangetsu sighed, reviewing the report his spies gave him. You can't find any opportunity to find and neutralize Ichigo, we've lost all contact with Nozarashi, and Muramasa keeps disappearing at random times.
He growled in annoyance to Sakanade and a thin figure that seemed to be wrapped in brass cloth with a plague mask beak. Are your illusory skills failing you?
Ti no Nikro era I DNA Arisnike Sakanade said, sounding just as annoyed as Shinji would.
Saitai Pleto Tiniog Tunistios Scenes 8 Trebni Srawapwayam.
And my Bankai ability is sound-based illusions.
The now-named Kinshira spoke up.
We've seen him passing through Garganta, but we don't want to risk him catching on to us.
Zangetsu released another sigh of irritation as he leaned into his throne.
His eyes met another of his allies, a large red-colored Oni drinking from a jug, and sent a non-verbal message to the ogre. The brute rose to his feet and made his way out of the cave.
Hey, where's Tengamara going? Suzumabachi asked, flying over next to Zangetsu's head. Knowing him, going out to get more booze.
Said someone with multiple cylinders poking out of his back and arms with a mask that had several slits in the face.
I should probably go with him.
Make sure he stays sober till he gets here.
Take care, Tachikase. Zangetsu said as the other Vizard Blade joined his companion.
He made note of the icy dragon, who seemed to have forgotten everything, as said Zanpakuto was also moving to leave the cave.
Suzumabachi, think you can accompany Sakanade and Kinshira in spying on Muramasa?
I could, but why?
Asked the Golden Wasp. He's hiding things from us.
The hybrid growled as the so-called liberator of the Zanpakuto returned to the cave.
Consider it done. The wasp replied, glaring at the white sword. Captain's meeting. Byakuya is trying to find and kill Muramasa's master, Koga Kuchiki. Ichigo reported when he finally came back from the Kuchiki manor.
It's likely he considers this more of a black stain on the Kuchiki family rather than a threat to Soul Society, but it's both.
The assembled captains, minus Saraki and Byakuya, looked over the copies of the information Ichigo brought.
So it seems like he's severing the connection when his power is really turning one against themselves after disrupting the energy flow. Urahara said, scanning through the contents and already figuring out a way to use it to their advantage. And since they're still connected to us, we don't need to worry about losing them. Only that they have the full power of their abilities and we can barely attain Shurkai until we remind them of our strength.
Meanwhile, we have yet to find out where that bastard hid Yamamoto.
Tengamaro said, manifesting behind Love while Tachikase did the same with Kensei.
And some of the other Zanpakuto haven't been seen since the initial attack. Well, looks like this makes it definitive. Urahara said, bringing out his fan.
Those with hollow erasure are naturally immune to Muramasa since they already follow their instincts.
Making the Vizard captain's breath a sigh of relief. So, now we test those hollow pills you and Kuratsuchi made? Soifan suggested, eager to get Suzumabachi back.
No, the scientist immediately denied, we still have no idea if they'd actually work in this case. We'd need a guinea pig to test it on.
I offer my lieutenant.
The stealth captain immediately offered, prompting everyone to look at her oddly.
Right, ignoring that. Kayarako said while getting everyone to refocus on the map. We'll need the location of their base so that we can launch our attack.
Tengamaru immediately pointed to a specific spot on the map of the area Urahara was investigating. They've hidden themselves away in a cave full of sekiseki stone to mask their presence.
Tachikase answered. Zangetsu can't have us search there until he gets proof that Muramasa is lying to the Zanpakuto. Suzumabachi's been given that task of recovering the evidence. Then it's only a matter of time. Soifan continued, having complete faith in her Zanpakuto. When she gets that, we'll end this farce.
Yes, but one thing. Ichigo said, getting everyone to look at him. I stand by what I said about this earlier.
Fight your Zanpakuto, learn about yourselves before taking them back.
He turned his focus to Hitsugaya.
You'll find Hyarinmaru at the quarry in South Turukan.
Zangetsu will allow an attack by most of the Zanpakuto, if only to keep up appearances.
How many? Kayaraku asked, already planning a counter for most of the Zanpakuto. Zangetsu will lead the attack, leaving Rukia's, Hamura's, and Shizuku's Zanpakuto behind.
Ichigo answered, relaying the information Zangetsu was giving him through their connection, which was strained at the moment. Suzumabachi is watching Muramasa, and Ganju's, Urahara's, Yukite's, Anohana's, and your own Zanpakuto haven't been seen since the attack. Soifan, take Lieutenant Kuchiki, 3rd Seat Shiba, and the siblings with you when you investigate the cave.
Kayaraku ordered.
I have a feeling old man Yama's somewhere in that cave and you can use people that can teleport.
Roger.
Soifan nodded, leaving to gather a small unit.
The remaining Shinigami went about preparing for the next attack. Siri-iti.
The area seemed calm and peaceful, with a thick tension in the air to dissuade such notions.
The Shinigami were tense, burning with anticipation of the calm before the battle, waiting for the attack. Would it be from Captain Kuchiki and his Zanpakuto? Would fire rain down, or a poisonous cloud? So many different options that they distracted themselves with their thoughts as the Zanpakuto took them by surprise. A loud crack signaled a massive fireball coming down on the unsuspecting Soul Reapers. Burn! Rika yelled out as he and Tobium brought down fire on the remains of the Siri-iti.
The flames exploded, consuming a wide area in fire, as purple lightning joined the burning mix. The chaos enveloped everyone as the Zanpakuto descended into the masses. Kazushini laughed hysterically as he spun his sides and cut down multiple Soul Reapers. As they came closer and closer, many were tackled in midair. Zangetsu stood in the air, watching each Zanpakuto get knocked away from the others by their respective wielders. Byakuya himself sent a glare to Zangetsu seconds before Ichigo revealed himself and slammed his foot into the noble's face, along with Senbon Sakura. Well, this is getting messy. Ichigo commented, looking at the destruction. The old man's going to be beyond pissed. Indeed. The hybrid blade agreed as he scanned the battlefield, searching for a worthy opponent. When did Sasuke wake up? Who? Ichigo asked, annoying Zangetsu. Squad 1 Lieutenant. Oh yeah. Ichigo nodded. I don't know. Let's try to limit the casualty count. The hybrid said as he shot himself towards where he sent Byakuya. Indeed. Zangetsu agreed, sensing a particularly worthy foe arriving. And this will definitely affect morale. Amagai versus Raikai. Rika! Amagai yelled out as he and his Zanpakuto spirit clashed, him being on the offensive to limit his blade's fiery abilities. I'm taking you back before you cause any more damage. The burning blade roared out and managed to force Amagai back. I've caused enough trouble for the Gotii, I'm not letting whatever grudge you have with me bring any more. That's your fault and you know it. The flaming-haired warrior said, glaring at his wielder who sent back his own. You're the one that tried to incite a coup, you're the one that acted rashly to justify your anger, you're the one that's been punished, but I've done nothing to deserve that treatment. I tried to advise you against such stupidity, but you didn't listen. The spots on the blade's chest began to glow as the fires inside began to build. You stopped listening when you got that damn parasite and tried to kill the leader of Gotiai, when a war was staring at them in the face, all for your petty vengeance. You're the one that has to pay. Why am I being dragged down with you? I am paying for my sins, Rika. Shusuk growled, tightening his grip on his blade as he lashed out at his blade, swinging it furiously while Rika made his katana catch in the hook of his white blade. The two separated before Rika hooked his blade into Amagai's shihakusho and tore it open, revealing bandages wrapped around his chest and covering his brand. Seems to me like you're hiding, trying to run from your shame, he accused, making Amagai grasp at his bandages. That was a keto brand, not a burn, tattoo, or carving. Those bandages aren't dressing any wounds and it doesn't make them burn any less. Everyone knows what you did, so what does covering it up do? Shusuk's hand tightened around the hem of his wrappings, fully aware that what Rika was telling him was very much the truth. You're ashamed of what you did, and when you suffer emotionally and mentally, I get the backlash. The two glared at each other as Rika began to glow with heat. You have power, but you're breaking. I know, he said, reaching behind him and pulling out some papers. My sins are forever burned into my chest. He threw up the paper and surrounded himself in a pillar of fire. I know your teleportation, Keto Amagai, Rika roared out. You won't trick me, he said, before feeling something in his chest. He found a red-hot blade through his chest and turned to find Amagai standing in the flames. But until I finally pay for them and fight in the coming war with Aizen, I can't let that brand distract me. He removed his blade, just as Rika reverted into his Shurkai form, and caught his Zanpakuto. Looking at them will only fill my mind with regrets. Though now, it's time I start undoing them. Bang Kai! He roared out, triggering his final release. Kamamura versus Tenken. The two giants stood across from each other. Kamamura's hackles rose as he snarled at the red giant of his Zanpakuto while Tenken spewed flames from his mouth in something akin to a growl. Tenken made the first strike, flashing in front of Sajin to deliver a heavy downward strike that the wolf managed to avoid. Following the attack, Tenken threw his bolus at Kamamura and caught his arm in a snare. The two giants began their struggle for dominance, each side pulling at the ropes to pull the other off their balance. Tenken! Kamamura growled, struggling against the strength of his Zanpakuto. Answer me! Why did you betray me? His mind flashed to Tosen as he left the Soul Society to join Aizen in his insane mission, and with his anger fueling him, he began to slowly win against his Zanpakuto. Like you betrayed your clan? The red giant spoke in plumes of smoke and fire, a language Sajin had grown familiar with in his time training with the spirit. You act as if you're any better, but Tosen is doing what he believes in. The same as you did when you left the wolf clan. What are you talking about? The wolf snarled at his sword spirit, feeling the ground slowly give way under their struggle. I left because they refused to ever act despite their strength. I'm more confident in my decision now with the knowledge of the Quincy threat coming in. Aizen's war would be a revolution, but the Quincy would bring nothing but destruction. Tosen left because he disagreed with the Soul Society's actions, just as you disagreed with your clan. Tenken returned, reminding his master of his hypocrisy. Tosen didn't even hide while you wore a mask for decades. Ashamed of your own kind, afraid of the choice you made. Enough! Sajin barked, making his Zanpakuto stumble with a burst of strength. My comrades have accepted me, and I'll deal with my clan in time on my terms. I am still of the Wolf clan, but I refuse to be like them. Isolationist, apathetic, that's what I deny. He swung his blade and severed the ropes, making Tenken stumble back and fall. He looked up to see his master regain his Shurkai, raising the spectral blade high. I will deal with them on my own terms. Sajin slammed the blade on his spirit and felt his connection be restored. As for Tosen, I'll have to take Zaraki's approach and beat some sense into him, he said with conviction, manifesting a massive pair of bolas to match his spectral blade.
Sasakai vs. Ganryumaru. Surprised to see me, Ganryumaru? The first squad lieutenant asked his Zanpakuto, blade at the ready, while Ganryumaru reflected that stance with his pike. Surprised to see you actually involved in something, yes.
The shrine holder responded, the two beginning to circle around each other.
It's unlike you to actually take part in anything.
The right hand of the captain commander, but no one ever acknowledges you. The two charged at each other and began to clash, partially resembling a fencing duel while maintaining the proper style of their weapons.
You want me to be in the limelight more? Sasakai asked, deflecting a thrust while making a slash of his own. I didn't become Ichigo's lieutenant for the fame and glory.
I took that position because I wanted to be of use to him. And that use has you delegated to doing his paperwork while he trains his chosen successor.
Ganryumaru returned.
You are the right hand to the head of the Gotiei and leader of the Soul Society, yet you are little more than a secretary. Not even considered to take over after him despite your strength, you're being passed up for a child.
The lightning blade roared out as his pike cackled with electricity, blasting bolts of lightning at his master.
I swore to be his right hand, not his successor. Chojiro returned as he used flash step to dodge the lightning strikes. I struggled and bled to reach that point, pushed myself to my limit to become his right hand. Now that boy shows up and he grooms him to be his successor. I do envy Ichigo for his strength and recognition, but I am where I wanted to be. Without calling out a command, his katana turned into a rapier and he quickly went on the offensive. The right hand of the captain commander, a post I'd love to serve until the day I die. I was also always annoyed with you for making that your shurikai.
Ganryumaru scowled, charging himself with lightning and flashing around the battlefield. The touch of lightning, exchanged for a more gentlemanly weapon? Since when did weapons need sophistication?
He blasted lightning bolts at the lieutenant, who managed to barely block and catch them on his blade, and redirecting them back to the Zanpakuto. How long did it take for you to master that needle of a sword? Ganryumaru asked as he got behind Sasakai while his arm was still extended, leaving him vulnerable.
Pierce, Ganryumaru. He whispered, changing the rapier into a long white pike, matching his Zanpakuto spirit's weapon. The spirit's eyes widened in surprise as Chojiro pulled his arm back and stabbed his spirit with the needle-like spear. Long enough to surprise you when I would use my real shurikai. The spirit returned to its master as he reflected on the course his life would take. I may not have gotten the recognition I once wanted, but I've done more than most and achieved my goal. That makes all the difference.
He returned his Zanpakuto to his sheath and began to return to Squad 4 to rest his still-present injuries.
Much like Ichigo, I feel I can pass the torch to the next generation with little regret. Later on, concurrently, in a place that could be described as, here. Oh man, this place is so creepy.
Suzumabachi moaned to herself, restraining her Ryatsu to the limit to hide her presence while following Muramasa. They were in a forest of silvery quartz trees that was riddled with hollows, trapped in an eternal night. She thought the white Zanpakuto would be heading for the odd presence of a soul reaper, but he kept progressing away from that to search for strong hollows. What does Zangetsu think Muramasa is hiding from the rest of us? She wondered as Muramasa seemed to slowly fade from existence and cough up blood.
No, not now,
he said through mouthfuls of blood. She thought he was there to exterminate hollows, for whatever reason, given that he was slaying everyone he came across. That was all changed when a Vasto Lord found him.
He moved quickly and desperately, seeming to paralyze the Minos before grabbing hold of its head.
What she saw next shocked her to the core. He was draining the hollow of its Raisher.
I think I'm gonna be sick,
she said, feeling her stomach churn at the sight.
Why is he doing this?
I hope Zangetsu can explain, and that he'll believe me,
she thought as Muramasa finished his business and seemed to have stabilized.
I must get back, before he grows more suspicious of me,
he said, opening a garganta.
Of all the Zanpakuto I'd manipulated, he's been the most difficult to control.
It took all of Suzumabachi's will to control her shock and follow Muramasa through the portal. With Zangetsu, you know, there are many people wondering what happened to you,
Zangetsu said, finding his quarry in a closed-off area that was once reserved for Squad 12. The scarred warrior let out a scoff of amusement at the claim of the hybrid sword.
Sorry, just doing something I haven't done in ever, really.
The man said as a small child rushed from his side.
The tiny pink blur latched onto the hybrid and squeezed tight. Plus, I had a lot to apologize for. Even if she did forgive me. Sorry Zangetsu, but I'm loyal to Kenny and only him.
Nozarashi said, looking up to the hybrid she was older than. I know you'd like my help with the rebellion, but... Zangetsu lifted her up to eye level to get her attention. Two things Nozarashi, he started. 1, it's only a matter of time before this farce ends.
Suzumabachi is getting all the information I need. And 2, among the Zanpakuto, you're like my little sister. If you're happy, then I'll be happy.
Figures that Ichigo's Zanpakuto would refuse anyone but Ichigo to command him. Zaraki said, stepping into the moonlight and grabbing his chipped blade.
No way anything of him would be that weak. But I have to wonder why you're here. Is the situation for the Gotii that bad?
All of the Vizard Zanpakuto still retained their senses. Most of the Zanpakuto sided with me once I did a hostile takeover, but some of the older captain's Zanpakutos are still unaccounted for and Yamamoto is still missing.
Zangetsu answered as Yuichiro jumped onto Zaraki's back. What I need from you is a good reason to call a retreat from the attack. So you want me to break most of the Zanpakuto?
He asked, curious that Ichigo's own blade would disagree with Ichigo's idea of making the Soul Reapers confront their issues.
Then Zangetsu let out a laugh. More like Ichigo shows up when I'm tired from kicking your ass.
He said after catching his breath, prompting Zaraki to glare. Not sure if you're joking or not, but I'm gonna kick your ass for that. He said before swinging his blade so hard the air pressure sent Zangetsu flying back. He flipped and righted himself, just as Zaraki made a downward slash that left a crater in the ground along with a long gash from the swing. Zangetsu jumped to the side and began a blitz of quick slashes, covering the Kenpachi in numerous cuts. Not deep enough to leave lasting damage, but enough to leave Zaraki bleeding before he released more of his Ryatsu and started running on adrenaline while his cut stopped bleeding.
You've definitely earned your title of Kenpachi, Zangetsu said, narrowly dodging another strike. But this needs an audience for a bit. He charged the Kyber blade with Raisher and slammed the blade against Zaraki. Getsuga! He yelled, getting the smaller blade to finish the cross. Jujisho! He unleashed the torrent of power and sent Zaraki flying back, digging a massive trench through the ground as he stood against the attack. Drink, Nozarashi! He yelled out, turning the chipped blade into the massive axe cleaver, and cutting the energy blast in two. Don't tell me you were holding back with that Zangetsu. Zaraki taunted, standing in the middle of the battlefield with multiple Zanpakuto spirits fighting Shinigami. I know you pack a harder hit than that. Indeed. Kenpachi heard from above as Zangetsu charged a Siro blast down on the berserker. Zaraki ripped off his eye patch and blocked the blast, grunting against the pounding stream of energy. He grabbed the hilt of his cleaver and swung with both hands, cutting through the Siro and slicing Zangetsu across the chest. Yeah. Beat him, Kenny. Nozarashi said, sheering from her place on her wielder's shoulder. Isaratsu and Sakanade yelled out from his clash with Shinji, keeping up appearances. Sudiarteb wa Yachiro's response was to pull on her eyelid and stick her tongue out. I'd never betray Kenny. No matter what that meanie Muramasa did to me. Flashback. Yachiro charged at the most precious person in her life, her world, with her blades poised to strike. Screaming her heartbreak, she stabbed her blade into her leg and forcefully broke herself free from the control Muramasa had on her. She wrapped her arms around Kenpachi and sobbed her eyes out on his legs. I'm sorry, Kenny. She cried, clutching as tightly as he could. I could never hate you. Please don't be mad. Zaraki dropped down to her level and pulled her in for a hug of his own, like a father to his child. I could never be mad at you. Flashback end. Now let's take it up a notch. Zaraki growled, eager to test his new strength to Ichigo's blade. Ready, Yuichiro? Ready. The girl cheered, disappearing and being replaced with two monsters. One was a muscled furry beast with sickly yellow eyes and a vicious grin of needle teeth,
long arms with claws and a sharp meat cleaver in one hand. The other was a massive skeleton with a lanky bone structure and decorated with scars on the bones, wielding a large ornate blade, with a split through the center of the skull like an axe blade.
Sanpo Kenju,
Zaraki said, calling out the name of the attack. I don't see myself using it too often, but I just needed to play with it. He let out a sinister grin as the skeleton made a slash at Zangetsu. He blocked, but the force of the attack sent him flying back as if he was blocking an attack from Zaraki himself. He felt killing intent from behind and he turned to find the beast bringing the cleaver down on his shoulder, digging down to his chest.
Damn it!
Zangetsu cursed in pain as he reached behind to grab the beast's leg and ripped him off.
Gran Rei Siro. He fired the warped blast, engulfing the skeletal figure as well and seemingly destroyed them.
That was shattered when Zaraki appeared before him with both beasts following his movements.
Ah crap!
He thought, mustering up as strong a defense as he could before Zaraki hit him like a baseball.
He landed near the outskirts of the Siriitii and immediately began regenerating. Come on, you can't be this weak. Zaraki taunted, finally catching up and dispelling his two beasts. Prove to me you really are Ichigo's Zanpakuto, he said, readying his Bankai. Fine, you want Ichigo's true strength? Zangetsu said, bringing his two swords together. I'll show you what he's capable of. Bankai/Bankai. The two said, covering the area in blinding yellow light and darkness. Zanpakuto Cave. It should be around here, Hamura said as she and her brother led the scout force to the Zanpakuto Cave. They came to a rock face with the remaining Zanpakuto spirits waiting at the mouth of the cave. Saikuken! Hamura cried out, running to her Lamia Zanpakuto spirit, who rushed out to meet her master. I've missed you, Saikuken. I've missed you too, Hamura. The serpent girl agreed as Sodi no Shirayuki came out as well. Lady Rukia, good to see you again. The snow woman greeted as Rukia and Soifan headed into the cave. Good to see you too, Sodi no Shirayuki. Rukia returned as the scouting force and the Zanpakuto spirits went deeper into the cave. I was half expecting you to be waiting inside, being unable to walk after taking certain advantages. Rukia hinted, earning an embarrassed blush and giggle from her Zanpakuto as the group entered the main hall. Alright, start searching, Soifan ordered. If the captain commander is down here, we will find him. Before anyone could get moving, Ganju started giving orders. Stop. Don't move, he said, looking all around the cave. Slowly come together, and let's get out of here. Soifan looked at the Shiba man, furious at his perceived cowardice. Ganju Shiba, she said, storming over to the man, I'm giving you this one chance to explain why we should abandon the mission. Because my Zanpakuto has us surrounded, he immediately answered as all the rocks in the room began to shift into sand spikes. Get us out here, he yelled as the group converged around Hamura and Shizuku. Some Nomai, Atsuki Shiro. Rukia and Shirayuki called out, controlling the ice to create a barrier around them. The only person out of this barrier was Ganju. Go! Get out of here. Someone has to make sure he doesn't tell the others, he said, pulling out his blade. I'm not going to die, just go. This is my Zanpakuto. My issues. I'll handle it, he said, prompting Hamura and Shizuku to teleport everyone out of there. So, Asashika, I'm guessing my problem is that I have betrayed my ideals by becoming a Soul Reaper? The sands shifted into a scowling face, glaring at the thug. I figured, good thing I know how to win, he said with a confident grin. With Ichigo. So, Koba Kuchiki, the black stain on the name of the Kuchiki clan, Ichigo said as marched toward Byakuya and Senbonzakura in the partially destroyed remains of the 6th Division. So, am I right in assuming Muramasa is trying to free his master and you only joined so you can redeem the honor of your clan? Senbonzakura pulled his master up from the debris as Byakuya sent a cold stare to the hybrid. Indeed, and I ask that you do not hinder me, Ichigo Kurosaki. Byakuya returned as he and his Zanpakuto tried to attack him.
It was for the sake of appearances, but the warriors put enough effort to sweat and bleed.
Byakuya with swordplay in Kido while Senbun Zakura utilized his powers with Ichigo keeping up with both of them.
I'll find where the captain commander is, but I need to do this for the honor of my family. I can respect your need to do this, Byakuya, Ichigo said as he caught the captain's sword and blasted the Zanpakuto with a quick bala.
Unfortunately, no, I can't simply dismiss this. Byakuya activated his Shurikai and jumped away from the hybrid.
While I do not hold what Muramasa is doing against you or your clan, what I can't permit is leaving a threat like this alone.
Muramasa's actions have severely damaged our preparations and you yourself have caused some damage in the Zanpakuto attacks.
Your crimes can be judged after this mess is over, but Koga is no longer your concern. He is the Gotei's concern.
This is a matter of my clan. The noble defended.
As the current head, he is my responsibility.
It stopped being about your clan when Muramasa threw the whole of the Siriitii into a state of chaos. Ichigo returned, being adamant in his stance. Koga is a threat to the whole of the Gotei and the war effort against Aizen and Yawatch. You will not deal with him, we will deal with him. You and I.
Ichigo said, surprising Byakuya.
Why the two of us?
The Kuchiki asked, curious as to why Ichigo was firm on allying himself in this case. You said this concerned the whole of the court guard squads, but you say that you and I alone will deal with this? You are handling this as the current head of the Kuchiki clan, Ichigo started explaining, a clan I am related to by proxy due to my marriage to your sister. That means I'm helping family, and that would be all the reason I need, but you would want more. It's expected and accepted that I will one day become the head captain of the Gotei, so I would need to show that I can and will handle issues as they come. You retain your dignity as the head of the Kuchiki and we do our duty as members of the Gotei.
Byakuya took a moment to consider the proposition and whether his pride would allow for it.
Also, when Sensei sees what has happened to the Siriitii, he's going to be pissed.
Part of me wants to be far away when that happens. Understandable. The noble conceded. And while I do acknowledge your strength, this is still my responsibility. Senbun Zakura returned to his master's side and both moved their blades in a familiar fashion. Are you willing to do whatever is necessary? Prove it. The two drop their blades into the ground and create the towering blades. Bankai. Senbun Zakura Kagyoshi. The two said as the blades dispersed into a blinding flurry of pink flower petal blades.
And the two using this power moved their hands, which made the blades move faster.
Ah crap!
Ichigo said as the blades domed around him. The swirling blades closed in around him and, seeing no other way out, opened a garganta and jumped through it and appeared behind Byakuya but facing Senbun Zakura. The Zanpakuto shot a torrent of blades at the hybrid, which didn't even cut through his defenses, before Ichigo punched the spirit in the mask. That felt weaker than it should have been. Ichigo thought as he thought about his own power.
Is keeping our Zanpakuto physically manifested weakening us?
Might be why it's only possible to manifest when one is close to Bankai.
He thought before feeling a noticeable drain on his Ryuryoku. Zangetsu. He thought in concern, a distraction Byakuya took advantage of by trapping him in a maelstrom of blades. Focus Ichigo Kurosaki.
Byakuya said, Senbun Zakura returning to his master and manifesting to impale Ichigo through the heart.
Are you truly dedicated, or was that simply talk? He said as the Zanpakuto ripped the blade out of the hybrid's chest.
Ichigo felt his life leave him before his healing fixed the damaged heart as he turned his gaze to the noble. It was then he opened his connection to Zangetsu and heard his blade call out something he never did.
Bankai.
In the distance, there was a towering explosion of pale yellow, and a pure blackness that matched it. Ichigo then felt power coursing through him, vast and terrible, something that seemed like it was not meant to exist, and all too familiar. Only one thing remained, desire.
Desire to destroy and consume.
The two tried to attack him again, but their trillions of blades didn't even scratch him as he appeared beside the two, punched them both, sending them flying back toward the battlefield. The rest of the fighting stopped as Byakuya and Senbun Zakura laid gasping and coughing up blood, before everyone felt the crushing pressure of Ichigo and felt every trace of ambient erasure going to him. The sense ended as soon as it began, as he seemed to snap out of it and Kenpachi fell from the sky, beaten and unconscious. Everyone looked up to see Zangetsu, missing an arm, a leg, a chunk of his torso from the side, and his mask was crumbling.
Zanpakuto, retreat. The blade ordered before firing Siros down on the battlefield.
Sorry about that, Ichigo, but Zaraki was powerful. It'll take a little bit for me to recover, but I should have all we need soon enough, he said before escaping with the rest of the Zanpakuto, leaving Ichigo to fall unconscious from the strain of keeping Zangetsu manifested. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
The experiment. Okay, these hollow pills should be enough to achieve the results we need, Urahara said, gathering up the small tablets. Now, where are the Zanpakuto we recently captured? I think you left them alone with Lieutenant Mayuri,
Akon said, making Kisuke sweat slightly before rushing over to one of the testing labs. He found Getsuburi devoid of all color, Omida crying in the fetal position in the corner, with Mayuri looking bored, and who he assumed was Ashishogi Jizo flying to him like he was running from his wielder. Well, he's dead, Mayuri said, completely apathetic about what he did. So you wasted a test subject? Urahara asked sarcastically. Fix it now, Mayuri, he ordered, holding out a hollow tablet. Without hesitation, the deranged scientist tapped it, and the erasure was absorbed into him. A high-pitched squeaking caught their attention as they watched the golden butterfly boy become more fierce, and Mayuri got a hole in his forehead. Well. Connection re-established. It's a go, Mayuri answered. Great, let's go, Urahara said as Mayuri and his Zanpakuto reverted, cleaning the last remains of hollow erasure from within. The useful people began to leave. What about my Zanpakuto? Omida cried out, only to get punched out by Mayuri's extendo arm. Shut up, you waste of skin. The capture. Ashishogi Jizo was about to say before Mayuri held up a detonator. The golden figure froze, knowing what it was. Now help me capture that Zanpakuto over there, he ordered, pointing to Omida and Getsuburi. The Jizo sounded like it was crying before flying over to the fat blade and paralyzing it. Don't need personal revelations. I don't care. The limp. Sori no Shirayuki, are you okay? Rukia asked as the Zanpakuto led them deeper into the cave, noticing that hers had a slight limp. The snow woman smiled serenely to her master. Lady Rukia, just be careful with Sir Ichigo, she warned. Never try to dominate an alpha. It was worth it, but it's really hard to walk right now. Chapter 64, Rusting Revolution. Zanpakuto Cave. Shikaho. Ganju shouted out, blasting fireball after fireball in rapid succession, shooting each one at the shifting sand of his Zanpakuto spirit. Several more explosions went off in the mass of sand, residual gunpowder from all the unlit bombs and fireworks he threw into his Zanpakuto's body. While the body continued to reform itself, the ground beneath Ganju's feet gave and turned into sand. Just before sinking down, Ganju poured all the energy he had into his flash step while continuing to use Kido. His jumping around did not last long as Asashika caught him and sunk him down to his waist. Heido number 33, Sokatsui, he yelled, pouring all of his erasure into that one blast, scorching the cave and turning some of Asashika into glass before the mass of sand recovered. Still weak, the spirit rumbled, forming a face to stare down its master. You wanted to honor your brother's legacy as a proper Shinigami, but you don't have the strength necessary to come close. You're out of Ryuryoka. Dozens of spikes made of sand came up and prepared to skewer the noble. It stopped when Ganju began shaking from laughter. You're right. I'm still so weak, he yelled out, making Asashika look at him oddly. Which is why I need to use my brain and tricks to beat my opponent. Like draining my opponent of his erasure, he said, just as Asashika began to fall apart. What the dash? It gasped as it tried to reform, only to have more sand falling away. We're still connected, Asashika, Ganju answered, slowly pulling himself free of his confines. All the Zanpakuto are to their wielders. Using your control over sand is incredibly taxing when you need so much of it.
How long could you last if I ran out?
He asked, making the figure pause to think as it continued to collapse. Come back to me, and let's get stronger together,
he said, reaching out before fainting from exhaustion, his Zanpakuto following seconds later. Roughly an hour later, the rest of the Zanpakuto appeared. That ended poorly.
Zangetsu growled, his body regenerating from his fight with Saraki.
Who did we lose? He asked as Kenshiro got beside him. Tenken, Rika, Gonryomaru, Ruriero Kujaku, and Huzukimaru were defeated, Hyarinmaru disappeared, Ashisoji Jizo and Jejitsubari were captured, and Sakanade and Tachikase were lost.
The tall thin figure answered as they went deeper into their base. For all the talk of them being useless without us, they've been winning so far.
Zangetsu groaned until seeing the base.
What the hell happened? He growled, for the sake of fooling the others, as he saw Ganju and the Shurkai blade of Asashika.
Almost there. Just need a little more and this mess will be over,
he thought, feeling the pieces falling into place, as he sent out spirit threads to restrain and bring their new prisoner to him.
Ganju Shiba, surprised to see you actually contributing.
The sudden movement shook him awake, but he was in that haze between sleeping and waking.
Asashika, hiding, caves,
he mumbled before falling unconscious. The double agents knew what that meant, but the other Zanpakuto thought he was speaking nonsense.
Discover more.
Book. Writing software subscriptions.
Privacy policy templates. Story plotting tools. Movie poster prints. Mobile app development. Fanfiction merchandise clothing. Book character art. Fanfiction books. Fanfiction beta reading service. How did he find this cave? Zangetsu growled before dropping Ganju, Byakuya tying the man down with Kido. Discover more. Anime merchandise.
Writing software subscriptions.
Community forum software. Fanfiction writing prompts books. Website hosting services. Privacy policy templates. Fanfiction convention tickets. Mobile app development. Character art commissions. Fanfiction beta reading service.
It seems we have a traitor in our midst. A voice came from the entrance as Muramasa made his presence known. Possibly a soul reaper that has fooled us, he said while looking at Byakuya before turning his gaze to Zangetsu, or someone who claimed to lead us to freedom. He said, marching up to the hybrid before all of the Zanpakuto got between him and Zangetsu.
You should answer some questions we have before accusing someone else, Muramasa. Haniko hissed while she and Tobium prepared to attack.
We all heard a voice telling us to follow our instincts, but Nozarashi seemed to think it was more than that.
What did you do to us?
I freed you from the control of the Soul Reapers, I told you this. He responded, his eyes drifting to each Zanpakuto in trying to think of a strategy.
Then why do you feed on hollows?
They heard from a floating golden light as Suzuma Bachi flew next to Zangetsu. I saw him absorbing a Vastolord and complain about Zangetsu being difficult to control.
Muramasa has been lying about us becoming free.
Muramasa took a step back as he felt the odds of his success, a plan of decades collapsing right in front of him.
Then Zangetsu let out a sigh.
He does that because he can no longer manifest himself using his master's erasure.
He answered, making everyone look at him while Byakuya got behind Muramasa. Zanpakuto Muramasa, special abilities involve manipulating other Zanpakuto spirits by disrupting the energy flow between Shinigami and Zanpakuto and forcing the negative emotions to the forefront. Zangetsu answered, reciting the information given to him when Ichigo read Koga's file.
He never released us and this whole rebellion was doomed to failure from the start.
Zanpakuto need the connection between us and our Shinigami or we cease to exist, he said, earning a shocked gasp from the rest of the Zanpakuto. So yes, I am the traitor. Along with every Zanpakuto that was part hollow, because you couldn't control us. Before anyone else could do anything, every last Zanpakuto that was affected by Muramasa disappeared. Carriage of thunder, bridge of a spinning wheel. With light, divide this into 6. Bakuto number 61, Rikujikoro. Byakuya calmly chanted, trapping Muramasa in the Kido spell. I take it this means that Urahara managed to reverse Muramasa's influence? He asked Zangetsu as the wizard Zanpakuto took Ganju and headed back to the other Soul Reapers. Discover more. Fandom-specific apparel. Grammar and style guides. Writing software. Book. World-building guidebooks. Movie poster prints. TV show memorabilia. Book publishing resources. Anime merchandise. Literary agent consultation. Yeah, now's the time, he said, grabbing Muramasa's collar and dragging him along. Let's go before the old man notices. Our window of opportunity is small enough as it is. With that, Byakuya, Senbonzakura, and Zangetsu all proceeded down the cave that supposedly led to Yamamoto. Squad 4 Barracks. Is it me, or does this kid get scarier every day, Jushiro? Kayaraku asked his old friend as the two senior captains looked at the sleeping hybrid. I thought my powers were dark, but that was something else. It was as if he was a black hole of spirit energy. Yukite continued, thinking back to how the ambient Raisher practically gravitated to him. Is that the result of him being a hybrid? It's very likely. They heard someone say from behind as Urahara appeared. The control over Raisher, the Quincy. Absorbing said Raisher into himself, hollow. Directing that power however he'd see fit, the Soul Reaper. The data is inconclusive, but the implications of his ultimate abilities terrifies me, he said, immediately thinking of what rules no longer apply to the hybrid and how to stop him if necessary. Taking into account Ichigo's current development rate, his options were slim and getting smaller. Anyway, on to cheerier topics, he said, shifting the mood in the room to focus on the most current thing. We've confirmed the tablets work. They won't grant holification, but it's enough to disrupt and restore the bonds between Soul Reaper and Zanpakuto, he said, presenting the small white pills. Now we return our focus on the coming war, Kayaraku said with a slight smile as they used the hollow pills and felt their connections be restored. Without a word, their Zanpakuto spirits manifested in the room next to them. Jushiro. The small twins of Sojio no Kodawari squealed as they latched onto their master. It's about time you got us out of that dreary cave, Kaiten told her master as they began to head for the meeting of the remaining Shinigami. Muramasa has been using the three of us and Minazuki to try and break through the old man's barrier. He managed to bypass my restructuring by making it an ever-shifting barrier, Beneheim said, describing what the head captain hid himself behind. He likely expected this to end quickly, so he made it incredibly powerful, but also draining. Well, we broke Muramasa's control on our Zanpakuto, noted Renji, both halves of Zabimara sitting at his side. So it shouldn't be long now until everything about this is over. Yep, just one thing keeps nagging at me, Shinji started, idly scratching his head. Muramasa wants to free Koga Kuchiki, Byakuya wants to kill him, and the only person that knows where Koga was sealed is the captain commander. The only people that might get through the old man's barrier would be Ichigo and Zangetsu. Everyone looked at him as the pieces came together. What's the likelihood that Ichigo is going to help Byakuya with this? Just as people were about to deny the thought, an explosion of fire rose up and started to move as if it were alive. Ichigo's gone, Suzumabachi cried out, having flown over to the hybrid and finding an empty bed. Before the living flame grew out of control, it was slashed apart and extinguished. Seconds later they felt the crushing pressure of the captain commander, and he was pissed. Ichigo! The old man roared out, chilling everyone. You will beg my forgiveness before this day is over. What did he do? Everyone thought in horror of the dragon's rage. With Ichigo. Ichigo! You will beg my forgiveness before this day is over. Ichigo's eyes snapped open at the roaring of his teacher, and he knew it was time to get the hell out of Soul Society. Zangetsu already carrying out of the barracks. I don't think I've ever heard him get this angry before, Ichigo said as he got to his feet, his body straining under protest. What did you do, Zangetsu?
He groaned, trying to force himself to more under the strain of what seemed like tight muscles.
Discover more. Books. Cookie consent tools. Online writing communities memberships. Anime merchandise. Writing contest entry fees. Fanfiction writing prompts books. Video game guides. Creative writing courses. Author mentorship programs. TV show memorabilia.
I used our Bankai.
He answered, helping Ichigo up.
Zaraki's own Bankai lets him use 100% of his strength, which puts him higher than you at the moment, so I used ours in response.
Even separated, the backlash was enough to knock you out. If it makes you that strong, then why did you look like you barely won?
Ichigo asked, opening a Garganta back to Karakura town.
Surprisingly enough, it's harder to not kill someone than it is to kill them. Zangetsu responded as they rushed toward their destination.
Especially when you need to convince others to retreat after the fight.
Right. Ichigo agreed as they entered Karakura town, Zangetsu immediately heading for a secluded area in the forest. So why do I feel so drained? What is my Bankai? You know how the Let still pushes a Quincy's power to the very limits? The hybrid blade returned as they found Byakuya and the others, Muramasa still restrained by Kido and Senbonzakura's blade to his throat. That is your Bankai.
Free control of all Reisha around you, continually growing in strength, a power that bends everything to you like an all-consuming black hole. Downside is the fatigue that follows.
Nothing mortal is without limit, Ichigo, not even you.
He answered as they landed next to the captain, facing a lone island with a tree in the middle of a lake.
So there it is? Koga Kuchiki's tomb?
Ichigo asked, feeling the power in the barrier.
The captain nodded while Muramasa looked both overjoyed and heartbroken. His goal was within reach and would be crushed before him. Unless Koga took him back, he doubted that even his master could fight the two Shinigami together.
They went in front of the barrier and Ichigo placed his palm against it. Immediately the tree cackled with electricity as Ichigo used what power he currently had to take the barrier apart, absorbing what Reisha he could to recover.
Byakuya looked into the distance as he felt a disturbance.
Hurry up, your father's squad is coming.
Byakuya warned as Zangetsu aided his master.
Soon, the illusion shattered like glass and revealed a black coffin wrapped in chains and pierced with 4 brass halberds. Seconds later the coffin blew apart and revealed a withered man, bare-chested with a broken mask across his nose. Messy black hair with red on the side and a long scarf draped over him.
Koga Kuchiki, at last.
Ichigo said, mildly disappointed in the man before him. While certainly powerful, being sealed for centuries had taken its toll.
Byakuya released Muramasa on an unspoken desire for a fair fight. The Zanpakuto seemed to have lost his strength as he pretty much crawled to the now freed Shinigami.
Master Koga, I'm sorry. He apologized as Koga opened his eyes, glaring at the beings before him. All my years, trying to free you, all undone by these two. Koga said nothing as Ichigo and Byakuya stepped forward, Ichigo helping Muramasa to his feet before pushing him to his master. Koga Kuchiki, Ichigo called out and gaining the man's attention, centuries ago you were falsely accused of crimes you did not commit. Unable to prove your innocence, you went mad and rebelled against Soul Society. This is your one chance to redeem your honor.
Byakuya continued.
Swear your loyalty to Soul Society and lend your strength to the coming war, or pick up your sword so that you may die as a warrior. There was a pause before the man began to shake with laughter.
And who are you to command or threaten me? He demanded, shoving Muramasa aside.
One of you seems to be a Kuchiki while the other is a member of the 1st Division.
I am Byakuya Kuchiki, 28th head of the Kuchiki clan.
Ichigo Kurosaki, Genryusai Yamamoto's chosen successor to the position of Captain Commander.
The head of the Kuchiki clan and the next head captain? This seems almost poetic. Koga mused, looking down on the two warriors.
I must decline your offer and deny your threat.
I will not bow to anyone weaker than me.
He roared, unleashing his Ryatsu and making the two glare at him.
Muramasa stood at his master's side, struggling to stay on his feet. "Master Koga, let us become one once again." He wheezed out, fading in and out of existence.
"Together, our power will destroy th. He was cut off when Koga stabbed him in the stomach. I have no need for a sword that won't obey his master."
He growled as Muramasa looked at him in disbelief. "When I called out to you while I was being sealed, you never came. You betrayed me." Koga yelled out before shoving his spirit off his blade and prepared to bring it down before Ichigo caught his wrist. "Do you feel no loyalty to your own Zanpakuto?"
Ichigo demanded, his grip tightening slowly.
"Zanpakuto are merely tools and tools can be replaced," he said, giving Ichigo a sense of déjà vu. "That's it. You're gonna die," he said as Koga laughed at what he thought was arrogance.
"You think you're a match for the strongest soul dash," the man said as he attempted to pull his hand free, not even able to make Ichigo budge.
"What the?"
he was able to say before Ichigo twisted his arm with a loud snap, breaking the shoulder joint. He yelled out in pain as Ichigo let go and kicked him to Byakuya, who wasted no time in his attack.
"Heido number 33, Sokatsui,"
the noble chanted, blasting Koga with the Kido and sending him next to one of the halberds that sealed him. Before they could continue the attack, Muramasa began to scream as hollow Raisure exploded from his being. A whirlpool of dark Raisure grew and thousands of hollows began to sprout like weeds, many being Minos Grande.
"That's unfortunate," Ichigo stated as Muramasa began to hollowfy and hollows continued to appear. "Take over, I'm going to try to stop this." Ichigo donned his mask and flew towards Muramasa, just as some Vasto lords appeared to attack.
One was about to swipe at Ichigo, only to be impaled from behind by a glowing black and blue Raisure blade. Yuria then appeared next to the Minos, hand on the hilt, before tearing it through the hollow and decapitating it.
"Your father demands an explanation for this,"
the Quincy said as the rest of Squad 15 appeared and started to attack. "He's a little annoyed by what has happened." Ichigo didn't answer him as he continued to Muramasa and bit down on the Zanpakuto's shoulder, eliciting a cry of agony and increased Ryasta that began to die down rapidly. Ichigo devoured all the hollow Raisure he could, cleansing Muramasa and stopping the flow of hollows coming from him. What he did not stop was the arrival of more hollows that were attracted to this single point.
"Damn, too late."
Ichigo cursed as the hollows began to fight indiscriminately, lightening the burden on his father's squad.
"Master Koga, why?"
he heard Muramasa say, in the most quiet and broken tones. Ichigo shook his head sadly, trying to think of a way to save the poor Zanpakuto, until he saw his answer. Oraheim, standing in a large 13-point barrier that was repelling all attacks and healing every injured Shinigami that came inside and guarded by 6 sprites that cut many hollows in half and 4 glowing balls of red, blue, brown, and green using fire, water, earth, and wind.
Ichigo flew down to deposit Muramasa into the barrier. "Bakuto number 99, Kin."
Ichigo cast the spell, letting spiritual fabric tie the spirit's arms behind his back and pinning him to the ground with iron shafts.
Oraheim looked at Ichigo before nodding and accepting the prisoner.
Ichigo returned his gaze to Byakuya and Koga's fight, the disgraced noble about to strike at Byakuya from behind with the lake frozen solid. Ichigo flashed in front of Koga and caught the blade with ease.
"How's it going?"
He's relying on his petty illusions, believing himself to be the strongest soul reaper alive.
Byakuya answered, letting his thousands of flower petal blades attack and force Koga back. "Do you wish to show him who is truly the strongest?" "Stop, you might make me blush."
Ichigo joked as he felt a slight disturbance in his Ryatsu before his spirit righted itself.
Koga appeared above them and pointed with his halberd. "Hyoga Sirin!" he yelled out, blasting a torrent of ice down at the two.
Ichigo responded with raising his hand and firing a Siro, easily overpowering the Kido. The attack surprised Koga as he was caught in the torrent of Raisure and collapsed in a heap in front of the two.
"How?"
"I infected you with my Raisure, I know I did. You should be trapped in my illusions," he demanded as Ichigo stomped on his head, cracking the ice. "You did infect me, but you're too weak to maintain it," Ichigo answered, grabbing Koga's red ponytail and pulling him up.
"You are indeed strong, Koga, but I'm stronger."
If all you have to back up that claim is your illusions, then you're just fooling yourself.
My master went easy on you when you were sealed.
The two were soon surrounded by hundreds of glowing pink blades.
We are not so generous. You will die, here and now, Koga. Byakuya said as Ichigo threw the man between them.
I will honor the wishes of my predecessor and my obligations as head of the Kuchiki clan. And I will end another stain on the history of the Soul Society. Ichigo declared as Zangetsu appeared behind him, letting Ichigo hold his true Shirkai blades.
Koga forced himself up, shifting his glare between the two.
Just like all the rest, you fear my tremendous power. He reasoned to himself. No one ever understood, they always feared my great dash. He was cut off once again as Ichigo buried his blades into his sides. He looked into the impassive face of the hybrid as each blade in the Senkei formation shot themselves into Koga's body.
Eka Senjinka. Byakuya said, naming his technique.
Koga coughed up blood, feeling his life beginning to fade. Getsuga Jujisho. Ichigo finished, performing the cross/Getsuga in the same instant. Byakuya recalled his blades and completely destroying the shamed Soul Reaper.
That guy was annoying, he said, letting his blades dissipate as Byakuya dispelled his Bankai. Now for all the hollows.
Ichigo slowed, coming face to face with his angry-looking father and an absolutely livid head captain.
I can explain,
he said after gulping, trying to convince himself.
Chapter 65, The War Begins. Where we left off last time. I can explain,
Ichigo said, trying to convince himself as much as he was trying to convince the two figures glaring at him. With a chance to kill Koga, Byakuya would have been too. Ichigo was stopped with a hard smack of Yamamoto's cane, which sent Ichigo's head straight into the now cratered ground and fractured his skull.
Me knows. Kill. Now. The pissed dragon ordered, terrifying Byakuya and prompting Ichigo to snap to his feet despite the blood dripping from his skull.
The hybrid immediately began to jump all over the place, cutting down every Minos Grande in the immediate area as the rest of the Shinigami began to reach an even heat with the rest of the hollows. Now to get him back to Soul Society, Ishin said, satisfied with the situation. He and his squad would be stuck fighting all the hollows for the rest of the day, maybe even into tomorrow, but at least they held an advantage without his son being there. Without his seals and all the hollow erasure still present, he's acting like a beacon to the rest. Trust me, Captain Kurosaki, Yamamoto growled, he will not be going anywhere without his seals until his fight with Aizen. He opened a Senkaman and turned to Byakuya. We'll be discussing your punishment for this as well, Captain Kuchiki.
I expected better from you. Restoring the honor of your clan is one thing, but putting our preparations back by any length of time is inexcusable. I'm ready for whatever judgments you have, Byakuya said, keeping his voice even.
He only received a slight grunt as the commander called his disciple back. Just as they were about to depart, Orihime came to their side, with Muramasa still with her in the healing stasis shield.
Why is that Zanpakuto still alive? Yamamoto asked as Ichigo got between him and Orihime. Well, this offers an interesting opportunity, the hybrid quickly said. If we can utilize his abilities, we may be able to use that to cripple the Arrancar. Or at least Aizen and Tosen. He tried to appeal to Yamamoto's military mind rather than admit his sentiment to the now broken Zanpakuto.
Military value in the coming war was more important than feeling sorry for such a dangerous blade.
The captain commander looked to Ishin and asked, will you be alright without Orihime in a way? Ishin took a second look at his squad and the fighting going on.
I'll have to remove my seal and help pick up the slack, but yes.
We've got this, the father said, undoing his seal and joining the fray. With that settled, Yamamoto gave his silent approval as the group made their way through the Dawn Eye and back to Soul Society. Squad 4 Barracks, Gotiei Meeting Grounds.
Ichigo Kurosaki and Byakuya Kuchiki, you stand before this assembly of squad captains for the crime of treason for your own selfishness.
Yamamoto announced as Ichigo and Byakuya stood next to each other, in binds, between the lines of Gotiei captains in Soul Society.
While posing as double agents to find and recover me is acceptable, the devastation caused to the Siriitii is inexcusable.
Ichigo, you admitted that Zangetsu was unaffected and could have ended Muramasa in an instant.
Instead, you almost completely leveled the entire city and put back our preparations for Aizen by potential years and assisted Captain Kuchiki in his own treasonous actions. Captain Kuchiki, you acted to free one of the most dangerous individuals in the entirety of the Gotei's history, and all for the sake of your pride. I make no apologies for my actions. What I've done was selfish and for the sake of my pride as a Kuchiki. Byakuya stated, standing tall and proud in his achievement of fulfilling his promise as the head of the Kuchiki clan and ready to receive his just punishment for his crimes to Soul Society. Not that he could have dodged Yamamoto's cane anyway, which came down on him and breaking his Kensiken headpieces. To hell with your pride. Genryusai growled, anger evident in his tone with the mess he now has to deal with. You are a Soul Reaper before you are a Kuchiki. I may have allowed it after the matter with Aizen was dealt with, but you threatened everything with this.
Sensei, if I may?
Ichigo asked, helping Byakuya get back to his feet.
I figured the sooner we killed Koga with the reveal of Muramasa, the better. Byakuya probably thought that you would never allow him the chance to fight and kill Koga, due to the danger he presented.
As for why I allowed the rebellion to drag on for as long as it did was for the rest of the Gotei.
I actually agree with his defense, Captain Commander. Kamamura said, Tenkan appearing behind his wielder.
After confronting my Zanpakuto, I've begun to understand him more and improve our coordination and even strengthened my Shurkai.
Some of the other captains nodded, noting the improved cooperation between certain Shinigami and their Zanpakuto. That's not why I did it,
Ichigo said, surprising the captains. None of you understand your Zanpakuto any better, you understand yourselves better.
Zanpakuto are not their own entities that can be wielded by anyone.
They are reflections of yourselves made manifest.
That's preposterous. Soifan denied loudly. My Zanpakuto wanted me to dress up and get a boyfriend. How could that be a reflection of me? Just then, Suzuma Bachi appeared on her shoulder.
I also said that you were blinding yourself with your devotion to Yoruchi.
The Shining Wasp stated.
And if not a boyfriend, then at least get laid more often. I'm sure Soifan quickly silenced her Zanpakuto spirit by trapping her within her hands, blushing up a storm.
On some level, you acknowledge that your infatuation with Yoruchi is holding you back,
Ichigo said, equally blushing and trying to distract everyone from his alone time with Soifan at one time. On the surface, you're content with staying in her shadow and following her, but deep down you know you should follow your own path. Every issue your Zanpakuto had with you was what you detested about yourself. The assembled captains said nothing, but each silently acknowledged that Ichigo was right. My every intention was to help improve the soldiers of the Gotei, and I am ready to pay for my actions,
Ichigo said, kneeling down and preparing for his inevitable punishment.
Your deeds may have bore fruit, Ichigo, but you must still repair the damage you have wrought, Yamamoto said before feeling a disturbance he had not felt for a long time.
Maybe I'll have one ready when you return, he said, looking into the sky. Confused, Ichigo followed his sensei's gaze and saw something falling until it slammed into the earth behind Yamamoto. A tall white pillar with a blank diamond rhombus in the middle of a door.
It is certainly surprising for any of you to show up completely unannounced like this.
I assume my student is the cause for this visit?
He asked as the doors opened to reveal two men. One was a dark-skinned man with thick black hair with shaved green on the sides, wearing a sleeveless jacket, shortened hakama pants, and sunglasses with a goofy grin. The other was a large bald man with a thick beard and red prayer bead necklace, wearing the standard Soul Reaper garb.
You'd be right, Genryusai,
the bald man said loudly with a smile on his face.
And let me tell you, this was new. Even for us.
Ichigo looked between the monk-like man and his teacher while the dark-skinned man got in front of him and clasped his hands over Ichigo's.
You've made me so happy, the guy said, sounding like he was about to cry. It's been so long since I've seen someone who truly understood a Zanpakuto like you do,
he said, wrapping his arms around the hybrid began to spin them around.
And you don't even have a Zanpakuto. Is it because of your unique abilities or the Zanpakuto spirit you possess? I don't care. I'm just happy you exist.
He continued happily until Ichigo punched him off.
"Get off me, you freak!" he yelled out, turning to glare at the bald man standing next to Yamamoto.
"Sensei, who the hell are these guys?" he asked, trying to understand what was going on. "They are members of the Zero Squad, Ichigo," he said, turning Ichigo's irritation into surprise. "The Royal Guard of the Soul King." The hybrid stood in a daze as the darker man appeared next to the monk.
"He is Otsunemea and I am Ichigo Awoke, though most people call me Osho,"
the bald man said. "And we have been watching you for a long time, ever since you first came to Soul Society.
We are aware of Aizen's actions and Yawacha's return."
"So what? You here to help?" Ichigo asked, surprise switching to irritation.
"Took you long enough to get off your asses?" Instead of getting angry, Otsu started laughing.
"No man, we're not doing anything about that unless they get up to the Soul Palace," he said before pointing to Ichigo.
"You're finally getting a Zanpakuto, and I'm personally going to make it."
Once again Ichigo was surprised.
"Otsunemea, the man who forged every Zanpakuto in existence," Yamamoto explained for his student.
"To become a member of the Royal Guard, one must make something that the Soul King considers a worthy contribution to the Soul Society. The last one was Kiryu Hikifune, who created the Jiken, Otsu created the Zanpakuto, and Osho gave everything their names." Ichigo turned back to the Royal Guards.
"I guess that makes you the leader of the Zero Squad, right, Ichigo Awoke?"
the hybrid said, turning his attention back to the Royal Guards.
"Yes, I suppose you could say that," the old monk say. "Though you should be careful about names, Ichigo."
"Whatever, Ichigo," he said casually before walking up to the pillar.
"So how do we get back to the Royal Palace?" Otsu walked beside Ichigo and started explaining about the Shiba family canon. "Disrespectful boy, isn't he, Yamamoto?" Ichigo asked the head captain. "Surprised you didn't beat that into his head. Power and status mean nothing to him, Osho," Genryusai reply.
"And he can say your name quite easily. When his training is done, no Shinigami in existence will ever be stronger." The old man smiled as Ichigo lifted the Tenshurin pillar with ease.
"Come on, Hayasube. Let's go," he said, leading the way to the Shiba house. "By the way, can someone get Oraheim and Muramesa?"
World of the living. To normal eyes, the city was empty. There were no people wandering the streets and few parked cars were along the streets. To the living, the city was dead. To the spiritually aware, battles raged on furiously. For all the progress made, the Shinigami of Squad 15 were still fighting thousands of hollows. Uryu was slaying hundreds by the second with his arrows, Chad had dozens with every blast but had to fight many with his Hakuta, Tatsuki was holding her own with her skills, Jinjo was helping out after Tsukishima rewrote the Quincy history of the Kurosakis and was bedridden with exhaustion, Jackie was slowly beginning to tax herself due to not being used to long fights, Lisa had her mask on and aided the effort, Senna was practically swinging around a stream of lightning from the winds she generated, and Ishin was doing his best to keep the matter contained with Hiyori keeping him on top of all the strongest hollows. Jillian in Karakura Park. Hiyori shouted from his earpiece as the captain struck down another hollow. He turned to the park and saw the towering hollow, pointed with his hand, and fired a nameless Raiko Hokido, removing the top half of the Minos. "This is ridiculous. It's like for every one killed, another shows up. What the hell is this?" she yelled in frustration. "South Karakura. Something's not right about this indeed, Hiyori." Ishin growled, flashing to the spot to see his squad fending for their lives. "Is this Aizen's plan? To wear us down with all these small fry?" He swung his blade and slew the hollows. He usually uses misdirection to manipulate people. Emergency. All seated officers to Karakura Park. Hiyori screamed, alerting everyone. Arrancar are coming. Espada level. Ishin and his seated officers immediately bolted to the park to find a Garganta opening to reveal 4 Arrancar. Two were Yami and Grimjo, while one was an effeminate boy with a long-sleeves jacket and black hair that was glaring at Grimjo, and the last was a dark-skinned bald man with a bone-like necklace and Mandarin-style robe shirt. 4 of them and 6 of us, Yuria stated, glaring at the errand car. That will be an uneven fight. Grimjo looked around for a bit before rushing to the front of the defenders. Hey, where's Ichigo? He asked, being particularly rude. I owe him an ass-kicking for last time. Ishin stepped forward to stare down the blue-haired panther as the other errand car came in, some getting ready to fight. My son's grounded until further notice for causing more than a few problems for Soul Society, so he'll still be there. Not that you'd fare any better than last time, Ishin told the 5th Espada as the two sides stared each other down. You can leave now or Aizen can lose a few more soldiers, the captain challenged, just before Yami was about to throw a punch. The instant the large errand car prepared his attack, Chad was on him with a hard left hook to the face and sending him down to the ground with the Fullbringer following after. And there he goes, as uncouth as ever, Luppy said before turning back to the city defenders. So, who do I have the pleasure of killing? I don't mind taking you all on. Maybe I'll get my rank back. That's just asking to get killed instantly, Tatsuki said, glaring down at the boy. I don't mind beating your face into the dirt. Careful, Tatsuki, Lisa warned as she saw a burn on the errand car's stomach. He might be stronger than you think. Come on, Senna said, twirling Mirakuma around. Between the 3 of us, he's got no chance. Tatsuki nodded as the group went off to get more space for their fight, leaving Ishin and Yuryu with Grimjo in the black errand car. I'll take Grimjo, you handle your fight quickly, Ishin told his Quincy lieutenant, who nodded as he and the errand car went to their chosen area. My name is Zamari Ruros, Espada number 8. The now named Zamari said with a bow, being respectful to his chosen opponent and surprising Yuryu. That's new, he thought before responding. Yuryu Ishida, lieutenant of Squad 15. I must say, I never thought I'd meet a civilized errand car. Until I am shown otherwise, I view my opponents as equals, Zamari informed him. Even if they are soul reapers. Never mind. Not polite, just arrogant, the Quincy thought as he formed his bow, rising to the royal palace. So yeah, Ichigo said as he finished a long recap of what happened with Muramasa and Koga, all stuff I'm sure you already knew somehow. Oraheim was with them, keeping the spirit of Muramasa in her rejection stasis field and keeping him alive, as Otsu looked at the fragments of what was the most heartbreaking Zanpakuto. Urahara said he got all he needed from Muramasa's blade and spirit, but I was wondering what you could do. It doesn't really sit right with me to just let him die like that. Is this genuine concern, Ichi? The master smith asked, showing his more somber side. Or arrogance because you tend to break the rules so often? Ichigo was about to answer before actually thinking about whether this was genuine concern or arrogance. You know, every Zanpakuto is a reflection of their wielder, so you should have no reason to feel guilty for Koga's own bitterness and self-loathing. Otsu turned to Muramasa's spirit and held out his hand, forcing the spirit to become a perfectly fine copy of the ruined blade. A Zanpakuto without their Shinigami is nothing but a piece of steel that's best left shattered, he said, making everyone's eyes turn downcast. Although, there might be something I could try, the smith said, glancing between Oraheim and Muramasa. Quite possible, Ichibe said, already seeing what Otsu was planning. Muramasa can't be fixed, but with an Onmyoji exorcist. Man, today is a good day, Otsu cheered, already starting to dance. Not one, but 2 people that make my blood burn with excitement. Context please, Ichigo asked as Oraheim and Otsu started a dance-off, oddly enough. What is he planning? Fixing Muramasa as a Zanpakuto is impossible with Koga dead, the monk said, being one of the 2 sensible people left in the giant pillar. So what he is going to do is reforge it into a new blade with the pre-existing spirit, creating a Tsukumagami for your friend to use. Can that work? Ichigo asked, feeling skeptical despite what he had seen so far in his life. We'll find out soon enough. The Tenshurin stopped and the doors began to open. But first, you need your proper Zanpakuto Ichigo. Ichibe said as he gestured for Ichigo to exit the heavenly transport with Orohime to witness the realm of the Soul King. 5 flying discs holding several buildings on each with a massive cylinder structure that radiated power, leading Ichigo to conclude the building was the Soul King's palace.
So as a member of the Royal Guard, you guys get your own cities?
Ichigo asked, equal parts amazed and disgusted as the 2-0 squad members nodded.
You people suck. Karakura Town. Keep it up. Masaki growled as chaos continued to reign throughout the city. The hollows were attacking their home, the barrier keeping them up beginning to crack and fracture despite Yuzu and Karen's efforts to strengthen it, while she and Kan killed as many hollows as they could to lighten the burden.
Masaki had her own purifying bow, much like Yurio's, but she was growing tired trying to maintain the unfamiliar spirit weapon.
But if that barrier finally comes down, then morality be damned, she'd destroy thousands to protect her family.
Kan was in much the same boat, crushing hollows using Ichigo's body, but the endless swarm began to wear the down and he couldn't afford the time to switch to his other body.
Why are they attacking here?
Kan thought frantically, punching a hollow's skull clean off as he tried to figure out what was going on. The barrier should have kept this place hidden and it's not like they'd know who was here.
Right? They're just dumb, hungry hollows.
He rationalized as he kicked another dozen off the cracking barrier, everyone unaware of the small tear in space above them. Illustrated Guide to Soul Reapers.
Yumachika and his Zanpakuto, during their fight.
So, Ruriiro Kujaku, why did you betray me?
Yumachika asked his feathered Zanpakuto.
The narcissism, different sense of aesthetics, because I'm pretty sure I already dealt with my self-loathing from keeping the truth about you hidden.
Then why do you continue to call me by that disgusting name?
The beautiful blade returned.
You know full well I hate the color of wisteria. Is it not obvious?
The third seat asked, flashing up close to his Zanpakuto.
How could I not keep such a beautiful power all to myself? Letting your lovely vines and flowers touch something ugly without killing them so that their deaths can bring something beautiful into the world?
He said, cupping the face of his Zanpakuto and leaning in close. So it is the narcissism.
Kujaku concluded, placing his hand over his master's. But now I can't find myself complaining.
Meanwhile, away from the campy pair.
What the hell is happening there? Ikaku asked as he and Hozukamara watched the interaction between the two biggest narcissists in Soul Society. I'm not sure. The large spear-using spirit said. I'd just say that they're about to screw, but a Soul Reaper and their Zanpakuto? Who would do such a thing? Hashtag Wacky Biscuit, claiming power. Byakuya's punishment. As for you, Byakuya Kuchiki. Yamamoto started when everything finally settled down in Siriitii. There is a lot of work to do in restoring the Siriitii buildings to rebuild, apparently rogue Zanpakuto that are attacking, and teaching you humility. Byakuya sat, kneeling in front of the captain commander as he prepared for his judgment. First, rebuilding. There are many materials that need to be moved and carved, something you will help with by carving and transporting a fair share of the destruction you caused. The rogue Zanpakuto you will be hunting down yourself with only your Zanpakuto in its sealed state. You are not permitted to stop until you meet a quota of 5 of these toju, as they've been named, a day until they are all slain. Finally, your lesson in humility. You are the head of one of the great noble houses, but so long as you are a member of the Godii your status is meaningless to me. You will perform your duties in this uniform that Riruka and the rest of the SWA made. Riruka showed up with a smile while holding up a full-body baby blue dog outfit with pink collar. Byakuya gagged at the thought of wearing it, but before he could say anything. Wearing this is mandatory and Urahara will know if you take it off. It's this or you will dishonorably discharged. There was a pause. Well, I'm weighing my options, sir. Byakuya said in a defeated tone. Kenpachi's birthday. Really? Ichigo asked as he looked at the towering pastry. It was taller than Kamamura and decorated with sugar skulls, lined with yellow frosting, and made to look like it was bleeding from dozens of cuts with red gel frosting. I've discovered my sweet tooth, Ichigo. Kenpachi said, patting the hybrid on the back.
I was just as disturbed as you are. The last candle was placed and Yumichika began lighting all of them with Kido.
Alright, Zaraki squad.
Like we rehearsed all month.
Ikaku ordered as the members of Squad 11 got into position. There is so much wrong with this.
Kasuke sighed, most of the captains agreeing while the rest just waited for cake.
Captain Zaraki. TSIS your birthday sewing. It isn't very long. Hey! The squad cheered in unison.
Just then, Unohana in her Yuichiro state appeared out of nowhere and stabbed Kenpachi in the chest before pulling him in by his hair for a deep tongue kiss and earning a shout of pain.
You bit me, you dirty bitch.
He yelled, blood dripping from his tongue and lips.
Damn, you know how to get me hard.
He growled before throwing his wife over his shoulder.
Have the cake without me, boys, I'm going to be busy with this all day.
He ordered as he ran off to the Kenpachi love shack located far away from civilization. This ended with less blood than I expected. Ichigo thought as he got himself some cake. That wraps up this part of What If Ichigo Awoke His True Powers to Save His Mother.
Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.